Chapter 31. As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, the surroundings instantly fell silent. No one had expected that Yi Xian would actually dare to humiliate Mo Suiqing in front of so many people. That was Mo Suiqing, the dream lover of countless men in the imperial capital. Right at this moment, Mo Suiqing suddenly slapped the table. Bang! The table instantly turned into powder. Mo Suiqing's figure flashed and appeared before Yi Xian's group. She stared fixedly at Yi Xian with a smile on the corners of her mouth. Do you have the balls to repeat what you said just now? Yi Xian walked over to Mo Suiqing, and they were very close to each other to the point they could feel each other's breathing. Yi Xian just stared at Mo Suiqing. A woman like you looks down on everyone just because you're slightly beautiful and you don't know how to respect anyone. You like to play with the men around you and you're happy to see them act stupidly because of your words and actions, right? To be honest, I wouldn't even be interested in a woman like you even if you lay naked in front of me. Mo Suiqing's smile still remained, but it was slightly cold. Everyone knew that the most beautiful woman in the imperial capital was angry. Mo Suiqing attacked. She spun her palm slightly, and a powerful airflow surged out from her palm like a hurricane. The Qi control realm. Moreover, she'd clearly executed some sort of formidable martial technique. As soon as the airflow appeared, the tables and chairs around her and Yi Xian were instantly turned into powder. However, Yi Xian didn't take a single step back, and he slammed his fist towards the woman who stood before him. Bang! The airflow shattered and countless hurricanes swept towards the surroundings while both of them retreated by over 10 m. Mo Suiqing glanced coldly at Yi Xian. Not bad. As soon as she finished speaking, she was about to attack again when Han Xiangming suddenly stood in front of her. Mo Suiqing spoke in a low voice. Xiangming, move aside. Han Xiangming spoke in a low voice. Suiqing, let it go. Can you give me some face? Let it go? Mo Suiqing sneered. Xiangming, he humiliated me like that and you want me to just let it go? Han Xiangming pulled Mo Suiqing's hand. Listen to my advice, can you? Mo Suiqing frowned slightly. Xiangming, just what is his background? Why are you so afraid of him? Just as Han Xiangming was about to speak, the Crown Prince and Lu Xiaoran rushed over. When they saw the scene, Lu Xiaoran's heart sank. The eldest prince glanced at Yi Xian and Mo Suiqing in the distance, and then he walked over to Mo Suiqing and smiled. Miss Mo, what has made you so angry? Mo Suiqing threw a cold look at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Zhang Yanxing, did you invite this guy here? Zhang Yanxing glanced at Yi Xian and said, Miss Mo, has there been a misunderstanding? Misunderstanding? Mo Suiqing chuckled. She sat down at the side and said, Zhang Yanxing, this person you invited insulted me in front of so many people, yet you're telling me that it's a misunderstanding? What? Is he your friend? Friend. Lu Xiaoran's heart shook and he gazed at the eldest prince. He was very clearly aware that whether or not he could rope in Yi Xian depended on the eldest prince's decision. How could the eldest prince possibly be friends with him? Someone suddenly said. He spoke rudely and publicly insulted Miss Mo. Such a person should be killed immediately to serve as a warning to others. Exactly. Such a vulgar person isn't qualified to sit in the same hall as us. Eldest prince, you should get someone to drive him out immediately so as to prevent him from insulting Miss Mo. The eldest prince pondered deeply for a moment and then he shook his head. I'm not familiar with him and I've never invited him. Lu Xiaoran sighed softly in his heart when he heard the eldest prince. Actually, he'd already guessed the outcome. The Mo clan stood behind Mo Suiqing, and Yi Xian had clearly incurred public wrath. So, it was utterly impossible for the eldest prince to stand on Yi Xian's side. Yi Xian's face remained emotionless when he heard the eldest prince, and he just held tightly onto Yi Ling's hand. Right at this moment, someone ridiculed. No wonder he was eating so happily just now. So he snuck in. What the hell are these servants doing? They actually allowed such a person to sneak in. Lu Xiaoran stepped forward and cupped his fists towards the surroundings. I'm the city governor of Thousand Mountain City, Lu Xiaoran. I was the one who brought this young friend here and I apologize for causing all of you inconvenience. As soon as he finished speaking, he gazed at Yi Xian and laughed bitterly. I never expected that it would be like this. My young friend Yi Xian, I'm sorry. Yi Xian shook his head. It's none of your business. Lu Xiaoran nodded and then he turned to gaze at the eldest prince, Zhang Yanxing. The latter stared fixedly at him. Elder Lu, do you know what you're doing? Lu Xiaoran smiled. Eldest prince, I'm sorry for the disturbance. As soon as he finished speaking, he gazed at Yi Xian. Young brother, let's go. Obviously, he'd chosen Yi Xian. Everyone felt slight disbelief. Especially the eldest prince. He hadn't expected that Lu Xiaoran would actually choose Yi Xian in front of so many people. At the same time, he was quite shocked. Exactly who is this fellow Yi Xian? Yi Xian nodded, and then he pulled Yi Ling along with him and was about to leave with Lu Xiaoran. Meanwhile, Mo Suiqing suddenly spoke coldly from nearby. What? You intend to leave just like that? Lu Xiaoran pondered deeply for a moment and then he walked over to Mo Suiqing. Miss Mo, I presume it was a misunderstanding just now. Please give me some face and let bygones be bygones, alright? Mo Suiqing spoke indifferently. It's fine if you want to let bygones be bygones. Ask him to kneel down and apologize to me and we'll let bygones be bygones. Alright? Lu Xiaoran frowned when he heard this. Meanwhile, Han Xiangming suddenly walked over to Yi Xian and she bowed slightly to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, even though I didn't do it on purpose, it was caused by me. I'm sorry. Xiangming. Mo Suiqing spoke furiously. Whose side are you on? Han Xiangming glanced at Mo Suiqing. Suiqing, if you take me as a friend, then let bygones be bygones, alright? Mo Suiqing's expression became quite unsightly. How can we just let bygones be bygones? Right at this moment, a voice resounded abruptly. Everyone watched as a young man walked in from the staircase. He was around the age of 18 or 19, had a robust figure, a crew cut and a ferocious expression. Songti. Someone exclaimed, it's that genius from the Tsong clan. I heard he's been accepted into Kuraki Academy in advance. Accepted in advance. Many people had to take tests in order to enter Kuraki Academy, but some didn't. All of these people had their own uniqueness, and there were only 5 people who didn't have to take tests this year. Xianxia was one of them. Moreover, practically everyone in the imperial capital knew that Xianxia was Mo Suiqing's follower. Xianxia walked over to Mo Suiqing, and then he glanced coldly at Yi Xian. Suiqing, I'll avenge you. Mo Suiqing frowned slightly. Xianxia, this has nothing to do with you. Xianxia spoke fiercely. He insulted you and that's the same as insulting me. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around to look at Yi Xian. Who the fuck do you think you are to insult Suiqing? I'll fucking shatter your bones bit by bit today. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. This charge was like a ferocious tiger descending a mountain, and an invisible imposing aura had pressed down upon Yi Xian before he even arrived. Yi Xian clenched his right fist tightly, and the imposing aura instantly vanished. In the next moment, everyone watched as Xianxia's fist smashed against Yi Xian's chest, and then Yi Xian's fist smashed against Xianxia's chest as well. Bang! Bang! Yi Xian moved around 3 m back, but Xianxia moved over 30 m back instead, and he only stopped after colliding with a wall. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they witnessed this scene. Jiang Yanqing's eyes narrowed slightly while a trace of shock could be seen in his eyes. On the other hand, Mo Suiqing frowned. They were very clearly aware of Xianxia's strength. Xianxia's physique was unique and his physical body was extremely formidable. Practically no one in the same realm of cultivation could go against him in terms of physical strength. Yet now, Xianxia was actually in a disadvantageous position. Xianxia's eyes were filled with disbelief. How could you possibly? Yi Xian's face was emotionless. A competition of physical strength. He'd truly never feared anyone. After all, he'd cultivated to the golden body realm. Not to mention humans, he even dared to fight demon beasts with his physical body when it came to physical strength. I refused to believe it. Xianxia suddenly roared furiously as he charged at Yi Xian again. However, Yi Xian's figure shook and arrived in front of Xianxia first, and then their fists collided once more. Bang! Crack! The sound of bones breaking resounded. Xianxia's entire right arm broke, and then his figure was blasted flying against the wall. Bang! The entire wall shook violently while Xianxia struggled for a moment, but he wasn't able to stand up in the end. Yi Xian glanced coldly at the surroundings and then he took Yi Ling's hand. Let's go. Wait. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded. It was the eldest prince, Jiang Yanqing. The eldest prince walked over to Yi Xian and smiled. Brother Yi, I understand what happened. You really did insult Miss Mo, so please apologize to Miss Mo. The eldest prince is benevolent. Some people bowed slightly to Jiang Yanxing. Please uphold justice, eldest prince. This person abused his power to bully others and insulted Miss Mo. His crimes are unforgivable. Please give the order to lock him up. Jiang Yanxing cupped his fists towards the surroundings. Don't worry everyone, justice is everywhere. I definitely won't turn a blind eye to it, and I'll definitely seek justice for Miss Mo. As soon as he finished speaking, he gazed at Yi Xian. Brother Yi, I'm afraid I won't be able to allow you to leave the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion if you don't apologize today. Yi Xian smiled. Your Highness, the eldest prince, you're killing two birds with one stone by winning over the people's hearts now. Jiang Yanxing spoke indifferently. Apologize. Please kneel down and apologize to show your sincerity. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of spear-wielding guards appeared in the surroundings. Each one of them was an elite soldier picked out of 10,000. Kneel down and apologize. Yi Xian chuckled and looked at Lu Xiaoran beside him. Senior Lu and Miss Han, please help me look after my sister. The reason why he asked Han Xiaoming was because one more person would give Yi Ling an extra layer of protection. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Lu Xiaoran hesitated for a moment before nodding. Han Xiaoming sighed softly and didn't say anything. Yi Xian turned to look at Jiang Yanxing and the others. Jiang Yanxing narrowed his eyes. Guards, this person trespassed into the Immortal Indulgence Pavilion, publicly insulted Miss Mo and even injured someone. His crime is unforgivable, kill him immediately. The guards directly charged at Yi Xian. At this moment, footsteps suddenly rang out from the staircase. In the next moment, everyone was stunned. At the staircase a woman stood there. Her clothes were whiter than snow, like a goddess from the heavens. Xianxia. The guards knelt down on one knee when they saw Xianxia, and the others hurriedly bowed deeply and spoke in unison, Greetings and Guesher. Even the eldest prince, Jiang Yanxing, hurriedly bowed. On the other hand, Mo Suiqing, who had a livid expression, stood up and bowed slightly as well. The Mo clan's Mo Suiqing greets and Guesher. Xianxia nodded slightly. Under the gazes of everyone, she walked over to Yi Xian, and there was a trace of surprise in her eyes after she sized Yi Xian up. Fight. As she spoke, she grinned. You've surprised me quite a bit. I haven't seen you for a short period of time, yet you've actually attained such a level. Brother Yi, can we have a chat? Brother Yi. Everyone here was instantly dumbstruck when they heard the words Brother Yi. Chapter 32. Brother Yi. At this moment, everyone here was truly shocked. How many people in the imperial capital could be called brother by Xianxia? Perhaps there were, but they were absolutely rare existences. How could someone at Xianxia's level be willing to be friends with someone of the same generation, be an ordinary person? Everyone gazed at Yi Xian, and their eyes were filled with curiosity at this moment. Even Mo Suiqing had a trace of surprise in her eyes. She knew a little about Xianxia, and she knew that there were probably less than a handful of people in the imperial capital that Xianxia thought highly of. What ability does this young man possess? On the other hand, the eldest prince, Jiang Yanxing, had an extremely unsightly expression on his face. At this moment he knew that he might have made the wrong bet. In front of Xianxia, Yi Xian smiled. Great. Right at this moment, a young man suddenly walked over to Xianxia and he bowed deeply to her. Guesher, this person insulted Miss Mo and publicly assaulted her. He should be severely punished. Abaddon, please uphold justice. Xianxia glanced at the man who spoke and said, Who are you? The man was delighted when he heard this and he cupped his fists and said, I'm Li Feng from the Li clan. Greetings, Guesher. Xianxia gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian remained silent. Yi Ling grew anxious and hurriedly explained, Big sister, it was they who bullied her. As she spoke, she quickly described what had happened earlier. A short moment later, Xianxia turned to gaze at Mo Suiqing, and the latter's expression changed slightly. The Mo clan was formidable indeed, but not to mention the Mo clan, even formidable powers like Kuraki Academy and Immortal Indulgence didn't dare to rashly offend this person. Xianxia withdrew her gaze and said, Miss Mo, the Mo clan is a great clan. As the representative of the younger generation of the Mo clan, every single word and action of yours represents the Mo clan. It's best if you don't act so childishly in the future. What do you think? Mo Suiqing's expression was rather unsightly and she didn't answer. And Lanxiu looked straight at Mo Suiqing. If you don't answer, then that means you have resentment in your heart. You can't accept it. As soon as she finished speaking, a strand of formidable concept suddenly swept out from within Lanxiu. In the blink of an eye, Mo Suiqing instantly seemed as if she'd been pressed down by a mountain, and her figure directly bent down. Moreover, her legs were even pressed down to the point of gradually bending. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. He was angry. At that moment, no one dared to speak up for Mo Suiqing. Under everyone's gaze, Mo Suiqing finally knelt on the ground. However, she clenched her fists tightly and her expression was ferocious. She was also a proud son of heaven. When had she ever been treated like this? Right at this moment, an old man suddenly appeared at the side, and the old man hurriedly bowed deeply to Lanxiu. Country scholar, and my young miss is young and insensible. If she's offended you, I hope country scholar and can spare her this time out of consideration for the head of the family. Thank you very much. And Lanxiu withdrew her concept, and then Mo Suiqing instantly slumped to the ground. And Lanxiu glanced at Mo Suiqing and said indifferently, "Go back and tell the Mo clan's patriarch that Brother Yi is a friend of mine. If the Mo clan is displeased by my actions today, then feel free to come look for me. If I find out that the Mo clan has hatred towards Brother Yi and his younger sister because of me, then I and Lanxiu will definitely head to the Mo clan and seek justice for them." The old man hurriedly nodded, and then he left with Mo Suiqing. And Lanxiu turned around to gaze at the eldest prince, and the latter's expression changed slightly. And Lanxiu said indifferently, "Eldest prince, do you know that it's not easy for the kingdom of Jiang to produce a genius? You've suppressed a genius of my kingdom for your own selfish reasons. Such actions are truly short-sighted and stupid to the extreme." Jiang Yanqing's expression was rather unsightly, but he didn't dare answer. Even his imperial father had to treat this person before him with respect. Others might not know what Lanxiu meant to the kingdom of Jiang, but as a member of the imperial family he knew it the best. It could be said that the Jiang kingdom's imperial family and countless clans would rather sacrifice him than offend Lanxiu in the slightest. Because only Lanxiu was capable of suppressing the monstrous geniuses of the surrounding kingdoms. And it was because of her that the surrounding kingdoms were fearful of the kingdom of Jiang and didn't dare offend Lanxiu rashly. Lanxiu slowly closed her eyes. "I'll resign from the position of entertaining the new students, and I'm not allowed to hold this position for the next 5 years. The eldest prince bowed deeply and then he turned around and left. However, he glanced at Yi Xian before he left. Lanxiu gazed at Yi Xian and said, "Brother Yi, please." Yi Xian took Yi Ling's hand and said, "Can I bring my younger sister along?" Lanxiu smiled and said, "Of course." Just like that, Lanxiu and Yi Xian turned around and left under the gazes of everyone in the hall. On the other hand, everyone in the hall remained silent for a long time. It was already night time and the three of them were walking side by side on the quiet street. Lanxiu said softly, "I never expected that after we parted that day, Brother Ye's sword heart would already be so clear, and he even comprehended battle intent. The current Brother Yi can be said to be a quasi-martial Dao Grandmaster." Brother Yi said in a deep voice, "Why are you able to see through everything about me with a glance?" He had wanted to ask this question since they were in Qing City. Lanxiu chuckled and said, "My eyes are quite special and I can see the essence." Seeing that Lanxiu didn't say anything, Yi Xian didn't ask any further. Lanxiu stopped in her tracks. She was standing right in front of Yi Xian. Two World City, the one who charged towards the Tang Empire's black armored cavalry and dared to block several thousand black armored cavalry alone, was it you? Yi Xian was a little surprised and said, "You, how do you know?" Lanxiu smiled and said, "The 9th princess is my close friend. She told me about what happened that day. The azure-clothed youth even brought a younger sister with him. I'm sure that it was you." Beside Yi Xian, Yi Ling smiled sweetly and hugged Yi Xian's arm tightly. Lanxiu walked forward slowly and said, "Brother Yi, the hearts of the people in the imperial capital are complicated, and everyone only cares about their own interests. But how many people care about national affairs? If any of the people in this hall were in Two World City that day, I'm afraid none of them would stand out like Brother Yi did." Yi Xian said softly, "Misson cares about the state of Jiang?" Lanxiu smiled and said, Only with a country can there be a home, and only with a home can there be a person. What I care about isn't the state of Zhang's imperial family, but this country. Do you understand? Yi Xian nodded when he heard this. I understand. In fact, he and Enlancio had the same thoughts on this point. Yi Xian was a selfish person, but if the country was in trouble he would also stand out. Just like Enlancio, he wasn't loyal to the state of Zhang's imperial family, and what he cared about was the state of Jiang. Enlancio walked forward slowly while Yi Xian and his younger sister followed behind her slowly. Under the moonlight, Enlancio's clothes were white like snow, and she truly seemed like a goddess that had descended to the mortal world. What a beautiful woman! Meanwhile, Enlancio said, Brother Yi, the hearts of the people in the imperial capital are complicated. You're a swordsman and you have a rather straightforward personality. So it's best to be careful in the imperial capital. Yi Xian glanced at Enlancio and said, Thank you. As he spoke, he paused for a moment and said, Can we fight? Fight. What he yearned for the most right now was to fight someone, to fight an expert. Because the shadow within the pagoda wasn't a match for him at all. Presently he had a vague understanding of his own strength. Exactly what level has my strength reached? When she heard Yi Xian, Enlancio turned around to look at Yi Xian and then she smiled. This smile caused the heavens and the earth to dim in comparison. Even Yi Xian was slightly dazed by this, but he quickly recovered from his shock. By Yi Xian's side, Yi Ling said in a light voice, Big sister, you're really beautiful. Enlancio lightly rubbed Yi Ling's little head. Beauty is only a layer of skin. A person's strength and beauty lies in the heart. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian and smiled. How about we fight after you attain the Qi resistance realm? The Qi resistance realm. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he nodded. All right. Enlancio stopped moving. Brother Yi, let's bid our farewells here. Yi Xian cupped his fists towards Enlancio. Listen until we meet again. As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled Yi Ling along as he turned around and left. On the other hand, Yi Ling playfully waved at Enlancio. Obviously she really liked Enlancio. As she watched Yi Xian and Yi Ling vanish at the end of the street, Enlancio withdrew her gaze and continued forward. Moreover, an old man had suddenly appeared by her side. The old man spoke in a low voice. Young miss, the closer you get to him, the greater the trouble he might face. Enlancio said in a light voice, Elderling, go tell them that I'll definitely not forgive anyone who dares to look for trouble with them because of me. Elderling laughed bitterly. Young miss, wouldn't it be fine if you don't get close to him? Enlancio said in a light voice, You feel that he isn't worthy of becoming friends with me? Elderling shook his head. He comprehended battle intent at such a young age and possesses a clear sword heart. Such natural talent and fortune are already extremely rare. If young miss is just ordinary friends with him, then he barely has the qualifications. But if, when he spoke up to here, he didn't continue. Because he noticed that his young miss was slightly special towards that young man. This wasn't a good thing. Enlancio chuckled lightly. Elderling, you're afraid that I'll fall for him, right? Elderling laughed bitterly. My young miss is a bit too straightforward. Can't she be a bit more tactful and reserved? Enlancio turned around and glanced at the place Yi Xian and Yi Ling had vanished. When I met him in Azure City, I rather admired his feelings towards my younger sister, and I didn't just admire him for what happened in Two World City. As she spoke, she withdrew her gaze and smiled lightly. A good man should be like this. Elderling's face instantly sank when he heard this. On the other hand, Enlancio had already gone far away. Elderling sighed lightly on the spot. Little fellow, you better not have any stray thoughts. Otherwise your life will be extremely bitter and even miserable. No one was clearer than him about how terrifying his young miss was. If he wanted to be together with his young miss, then identity, strength, natural talent and background were all indispensable. As for Yi Xian, he'd already investigated clearly. He really was just an abandoned pawn of a tiny world. Just this aspect of identity alone was already worlds apart between the two of them. A moment later, Elderling sighed softly and followed after them. At the end of the street, Yi Xian carried Yi Ling on his back and slowly walked into the distance. Big brother, big sister and is so beautiful. Big brother, do you like big sisterin? Big brother, why don't you take big sisterin as your wife? I think big sister and is a good match for you. Your big brother doesn't have anything. Do you want her to starve with me? Then do you like her? Big brother only wants you to be safe forever. Big brother. I want to be with you forever. Idiot, you still want to get married. I'm not marrying. Why? Because I'll never meet anyone who treats me better than Big brother. Chapter 33. Yi Xian carried his sister back to the mansion. As soon as they arrived, Yi Ling fell asleep. After placing Yi Ling on the bed, Yi Ling had curled up into a ball and was trembling uncontrollably. Yi Xian was shocked. He quickly licked Yi Ling's blanket, but Yi Ling was still cold. Seeing this, Yi Xian panicked. As if thinking of something, he quickly took out the Heaven Fire Warm Jade hanging on Yi Ling's neck. When he saw the Heaven Fire Warm Jade, he was stunned. There was a faint layer of frost on the surface of the Heaven Fire Warm Jade. Senior. Yi Xian shouted in his heart, Senior, bring the jade in. The mysterious woman's voice suddenly rang out. Yi Xian quickly brought the Heaven Fire Warm Jade into the prison pagoda. After a while, the Heaven Fire Warm Jade appeared in Yi Xian's hand again. At this time, the Heaven Fire Warm Jade had returned to its original appearance. Yi Xian quickly hung the Heaven Fire Warm Jade on Yi Ling's neck. Gradually, Yi Ling's complexion improved. Seeing this, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, the mysterious woman's voice suddenly rang out. 99% of the jade's spiritual power and source have disappeared. It will last for about a day at most. After that, it will become a useless stone. You should plan ahead. Useless stone. Yi Xian's expression gradually turned serious. If the Heaven Fire Warm Jade lost its effect, how could his sister withstand the cold qi? After a while, Yi Xian left the room. Outside the door, looking at the bright moon in the night sky, Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. Tomorrow was the day of recruitment for Kuraki College. Kuraki College. This was the largest college in Jiang country. Once he joined Kuraki College, he could seek medical treatment for his sister. And his sister would not have to suffer from the pain of her illness. At this moment, Lu Xiaoran arrived at the courtyard. Lu Xiaoran smiled bitterly. Little friend Yi, I'm sorry about tonight. Yi Xian shook his head. This has nothing to do with Senior Lu. Lu Xiaoran said softly, I was more optimistic about the first prince, but today's matter made me realize that he isn't what I thought he was. Sighed, these descendants of the imperial family really know how to put on a show. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Senior Lu, forgive me for being frank, but isn't it too early for you to choose a side now? Moreover, I'm afraid that person above us isn't willing to see you choose a side now. Lu Xiaoran smiled bitterly. Of course I know. However, if I don't choose a side now, I'm afraid it will be too late in the future. Yi Xian shook his head. With all due respect, Senior Lu only needs to pledge loyalty to His Majesty. As long as His Majesty doesn't die, nothing will happen to Senior Lu and the Lu family. Lu Xiaoran nodded. I'm thinking the same thing. Our Lu family doesn't want to be involved in the battle for the crown prince position. Yi Xian nodded and didn't say anything else. Meanwhile, Lu Xiaoran smiled and said, Young brother, Kuraki Academy is recruiting students tomorrow. At that time I'll have to rely on you to take good care of my disappointing son. Yi Xian smiled and said, Senior Lu, I might not even be able to join Kuraki Academy. Lu Xiaoran shook his head lightly. If Kuraki Academy doesn't accept you, then it'll be their greatest loss. Yi Xian smiled and remained silent. After Lu Xiaoran left, Yi Xian returned to the pagoda. He just returned to the pagoda when he heard something ringing from above. It was very soft, but he definitely heard it. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Senior, what was that? She said, What do you think it should be? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Senior, exactly what sort of existence is in the second level? After a short moment of silence, she said, It's not a good person. In short, you have to find a way to obtain a spirit sword to improve your cultivation once you enter the academy. Everything has to be sped up. Yi Xian nodded. The current pagoda made it difficult for him to feel at ease. Or it should be said that he was perturbed at all times. Because he himself felt that the existence in the second level was not a good person. There was no proof, it was just a feeling, and this feeling was given to him by the pagoda. It should be said that it was a warning from the pagoda. Just as the mysterious woman said, he had to speed up. Of course, his top priority now was to join Kuraki Academy. A day passed. Early in the morning, a red sun slowly rose from the horizon. Yi Xian pulled his sister Yi Ling out of the mansion's entrance. Outside the entrance was Lu Xiaoran and little fatty Lu Ming. Lu Xiaoran sized up Yi Xian. Yi Xian had changed into a cloud-white robe today. His looks were extremely good to begin with, and with a bit of dressing up he could indeed be called a handsome man. If he wore a sword at his waist and revealed his identity as a swordsman, he would probably be able to charm many young girls in the imperial city. As for Yi Ling, she had also changed into a dark green skirt, and there was a long braid behind her head. Although she was young, anyone could see that she was a beauty in the making. In a few years she would definitely be a beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. After seeing the appearance of the brother and sister, Lu Xiaoran was even more certain that this pair of brother and sister's origins were definitely not simple. Retracting his thoughts, Lu Xiaoran smiled and said, "Little friend Yi, let's go." Yi Xian nodded, then pulled Yi Ling and followed Lu Xiaoran and his father into the distance. They were not far from Kuraki Academy, so the few of them chose to walk. Today the imperial city could be said to be unusually lively. Kuraki Academy's recruitment could be said to be the most important event in the imperial city. In the entire Jiang country, the best way to stand out was to enter Kuraki Academy. Entering Kuraki Academy could be said to be like a carp leaping through the dragon's gate. Therefore, every time Kuraki Academy recruited students, geniuses from all over the Jiang country would rush over. When these geniuses came, their families would naturally accompany them. Therefore the imperial city was bustling. In fact, what Yi Xian did not know about Dao Yi was that without Lu Xiaoran, he and his sister would not even be able to find a place to stay in the imperial city. This was because the inns in the imperial city had basically been booked a month ago. Today Yi Ling was unusually happy because Yi Xian would be joining Kuraki Academy today. Once Yi Xian joined Kuraki Academy, Yi Xian would no longer be alone. He would have someone to rely on, and he would also have a good future. At that time, even if her illness could not be cured, she could be at ease. Thinking up to this point, Yi Ling tilted her head and glanced at Yi Xian. She held Yi Xian's hand tightly. If it was possible, she also wanted to live because her brother had been living too tirelessly ever since their mother left them. She was not afraid of death, but she was afraid that her brother would be lonely after she died. More and more people gathered on the streets, and all of them were heading in the same direction. Kuraki Academy. In the north of the imperial city, there was a huge mountain called Song Mountain. It was nearly 3,000 meters tall, and one could overlook the entire imperial city from the waist of the mountain. And on this Song Mountain was Kuraki Academy. On the way, Lu Xiaoran said with a smile, "Kuraki Academy has a long history. In this part of the world, the dynasties have changed countless times, but Kuraki Academy has always existed. Like the drunken immortal restaurant, they are two true giants." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Are there also Kuraki Academies in other countries?" Lu Xiaoran nodded, "Of course there are. It is said that the headquarters of Kuraki Academy is located in the central continent, but that is a very far place." Saying that, he shook his head with a smile and then looked at Yi Xian. "Little friend Yi, if you have the opportunity in the future, you should leave the country of Jiang, leave the Qing province and see the wider world outside. Only then will you not have come to this world in vain." Yi Xian said with a smile, "It's too far away. The most important thing is to take care of the present." Lu Xiaoran laughed, "Of course." Soon the group arrived at the foot of Tsong Mountain. Standing at the foot of Tsong Mountain and looking up, a feeling of insignificance involuntarily arose in their hearts. At this time, there was a sea of people at the foot of Tsong Mountain. Obviously, these people had come to participate in the recruitment of Kuraki Academy. And Yi Xian was also a little surprised because these people before him were at least in the Qi controlling realm, and they were all very young. As if knowing what Yi Xian was thinking, Lu Xiaoran said with a smile, "Don't be surprised, all the geniuses of the country of Jiang are here. Think about it, out of a population of tens of millions, only these geniuses are here. Are there many?" Yi Xian nodded. In Qingqing, an 18-year-old in the Qi controlling realm was definitely a super genius. However, Qingqing was only a small city. If placed in some big cities, they might only be considered ordinary geniuses. And if placed in the whole country of Jiang, they might only be considered ordinary. At this time, an immortal crane flew down from the sky, and on the back of the crane sat an old man. Soon the immortal crane arrived above the crowd and the old man looked down. "This old man is the outer dean of Kuraki Academy, Song Li, and he is in charge of today's recruitment. Today's recruitment is limited to 20 people, and there will be a total of 3 rounds. If there are more than 20 people who pass the 3 rounds, then these 20 people will compete with each other and the winner will stay. Penny. The crowd was in an uproar when they heard this voice. There were at least 1,000 people here and only 20 meant that 99% of them would be eliminated. Yixian's expression turned serious as well. Only 20 meant that the competition would be extremely brutal. The old man's voice resounded once more in the sky. The first round is to ascend the mountain. Those who are unable to ascend the mountain on foot will be eliminated immediately. Ascend the mountain? Yixian was stunned and then he looked at Lu Xiaoran. It's that simple? Lu Xiaoran shook his head. That's not simple. This ascent is suppressed by a formation, and the objective of this round is to eliminate those with unstable realms. Even though most people have attained the qi-controlling realm, many of them are not at that realm. Yixian nodded and then he looked at Lu Ming. Senior, little Ming doesn't seem to have attained the qi-controlling realm. Lu Xiaoran smiled bitterly. Of course he hasn't, and he's only entering Kuraki Academy as a special student. Special student? Yixian was puzzled. What do you mean? Lu Xiaoran looked embarrassed. Actually, it's just a degree bought with money, but it's not an official student. It's just a low-level class. There will be teachers in this class, but they're much worse than official students. Moreover, they don't have the status of an official student. Beside him, Lu Ming was a little dissatisfied. Big brother, Dad, at least leave me some face. Hearing this, Lu Xiaoran was infuriated and said angrily, face my ass. If you had worked hard, would your father have begged someone to get you a degree? Lu Ming curled his lips, not daring to talk back. Yixian and his sister looked at each other and smiled. At this moment, Lu Xiaoran suddenly said, little friend Yi, let's go to the starting point. Yixian nodded. Just like that, the group arrived at a Xiaodao at the foot of Tsong Mountain. Beside the Xiaodao there was a wooden stake, and on the wooden stake, there was a man who had been dead for God knows how long. At the scene, everyone pointed at the man and discussed animatedly. Yixian glanced at the man, then turned to look at Lu Xiaoran. Senior, this is? Lu Xiaoran said in a deep voice, a student of Blue Waves Academy. Blue Waves Academy. Yixian was stunned, then said, is he also from our imperial capital? Lu Xiaoran nodded. It's normal that you haven't heard of it. Now in the country of Jiang, everyone knows of Kuraki Academy, but very few people know of Blue Waves Academy. In fact, in the previous dynasty, Blue Waves Academy and Kuraki Academy were equally famous, but for some unknown reason these two academies became mortal enemies. Every 3 years there would be a life and death competition between them. Later, for some unknown reason, the strength of Blue Waves Academy gradually weakened, while Kuraki Academy became stronger and stronger. So, for the last 50 years, Blue Waves Academy and Kuraki Academy were almost completely defeated in the life and death competition, and those students who represented Blue Waves Academy to participate in the life and death competition were nailed to this Xiaodao. If you go up from here, you will encounter many corpses. After speaking, he shook his head and sighed. According to the agreement between both sides, if Blue Waves Academy can win once, they can take away the corpses of these students. Unfortunately, until now, no one from Blue Waves Academy has been able to defeat the students of Kuraki Academy. Chapter 34. Blue Waves Academy. Yixian looked at the corpse of the man in front of him, and his heart was filled with emotions. In Qingqing, the aristocratic families used extremely cruel methods to fight for their own interests. But he did not expect that in the imperial capital, the fights between the major forces were even more cruel, and they did not show any mercy. At this time, Lu Xiaoran suddenly pointed at a round platform not far away from Xiaodao. Little friend, do you know what this is? Yixian turned his head and looked at the round platform not far away. The round platform was more than 40 zhang wide, and on the round platform, there were 9 wooden people holding wooden swords. The 9 wooden people stood side by side in a neat row. This is? Yixian was somewhat curious and asked. Lu Xiaoran said in Xiaodao, this is the famous 9 palace formation of Kuraki Academy. It is said that this formation was created by the founder of Kuraki Academy. In this 100 countries of Qingzhou, all Kuraki Academy has this formation. And the purpose of this formation is said to be a test, a special test. As long as one can break this formation before the age of 20, the dean of Kuraki Academy must accept this person as his direct disciple, which is equivalent to the disciple of the dean. After saying that, he shook his head and smiled. Unfortunately, this formation has not been broken for nearly 50 years already. 9 Palace Formation. Yi Xian sized up the 9 wooden people. Is this formation very powerful? Lu Xiaoran smiled bitterly. It is not just powerful. Once there was a higher sky realm powerhouse who wanted to try it, but unfortunately, that person was directly killed in less than 10 breaths. And those who can reach higher sky realm before the age of 20, that is very few. Speaking until here, he slightly paused, then said again, it is said that Kuraki Academy invited Nguosher to break this formation, but whether she actually came or not, no one knows. Just when Yi Xian was about to say something at this time, an old voice suddenly resounded from the sky. The test begins. Along with this voice, the people gathered in front of Xiao Dao all rushed out. Yi Xian turned his head and stroked Yi Ling's small head. Then he looked at Lu Xiaoran. Senior Lu, please look after my sister. Lu Xiaoran smiled. Of course. Yi Ling gave Yi Xian a gentle hug. Brother, you can do it. Yi Xian chuckled, then turned around and joined the crowd. Looking at Yi Xian disappearing into the crowd, Yi Ling smiled. But very quickly her body trembled. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. Cold air overflowed from her body, making her look like a block of ice. Lu Xiaoran was shocked when he saw this scene and he hurriedly said, Come, let's go back first. Yi Ling shook his head. Uncle Lu, it's fine. As she spoke, she took out the Heaven Fire Warm Jade. With this I'll be fine. Lu Xiaoran still wanted to say something, but Yi Ling raised her head and looked into the distance. She said softly, Only when I see Big Brother joining Kuraki Academy can I feel at ease. Lu Xiaoran sighed softly. He patted Lu Ming lightly and said, Go get Sister Ling 2 long furs. Be quick. Little fatty Lu Ming hurriedly nodded, then turned around and ran. In the distance, Yi Xian had already disappeared into the crowd. Like everyone else, Yi Xian was quite excited, because Kuraki Academy was right in front of him. Once he joined Kuraki Academy, there would be hope for his sister's illness. In the crowd, Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the waist of the mountain. He took a deep breath and said, Let's do it. For my sister and for myself. After saying that, he quickened his pace. In the beginning, the crowd was very fast. But after walking for around 5 kilometers, almost 90% of them slowed down. Moreover, they were getting slower and slower. This was because as they walked, an invisible pressure suddenly appeared on their bodies. With every step they took, this pressure would increase by a bit. Therefore, after the people at the front had walked for around 10 kilometers, some people behind them were gradually being eliminated. However, the speed of the people at the front was still very fast. Obviously, there were people who were very weak, but there were also people who were very strong. Yi Xian walked at a moderate pace. As for the invisible pressure, it didn't affect him at all, because his bones and flesh were now so strong that even a levitation realm cultivator might not be able to compete with him. Hidden realm. At this time, the advantage and strength of his hidden realm could be seen. Time passed by slowly. The higher they walked, the fewer people there were. After 2 hours, there were less than 100 people who were still walking, and most of them were walking with great difficulty. However, there were still a few who stood out. One of them was a man in embroidered robes. This person had taken the lead from the beginning and had left the people behind him a distance of nearly 10 meters. At the beginning, everyone thought that he would slow down. However, what they didn't expect was that even until now, this person's speed was still extremely fast. Not far behind the man in embroidered robes was a man in a luxurious robe and a man with a long knife at his waist. The 2 men were nearly 10 meters away from the man in embroidered robes. Both of them stared at the man in embroidered robes in the distance. Although their speed was slightly slower than before, it was still steady and they didn't feel tired. And behind these 2 men there were less than 100 people left. Most of them were exhausted and walking with great difficulty. As for Yi Xian, he was still walking at a moderate pace. The pressure really didn't affect him at all. Even after walking for a while, the pressure on his body didn't grow stronger. Instead, he didn't feel any pressure at all. As for why he didn't walk quickly, he actually didn't think about this question. He was simply walking. To him, it didn't matter if he walked fast or slow as long as he walked to the end. In other words, he didn't purposely walk. He could walk however he wanted. Half an hour later there were less than 40 people still walking on Xiaodao. However, at this moment, the man in embroidered robes who was the leader had already walked to the end, followed by the man in luxurious robe and the man with a long knife. And when he was about to reach the end, he suddenly stopped and turned his head to look at a wooden stake beside Xiaodao. A man was nailed to the wooden stake. From his appearance he seemed to be approximately 20 years old. This man was quite miserable. He didn't have both hands and feet. He didn't even have eyeballs. There were only 2 empty black holes in his eyes. Needless to say, he should also be a student of Blue Waves Academy. Moreover, from the corpse he might have died not long ago. Xian shook his head and sighed. Needless to say, Blue Waves Academy and Kuraki Academy should have a blood feud. Without stopping, Xian quickly walked to the end. After all 42 people reached the end, a red-crowned crane flew above everyone's head. On the red-crowned crane, Zhong looked down at everyone. Finally, his gaze fell on Xian. When he saw Xian, his gaze became quite ice-cold. Seeing this scene, Xian frowned because he could already feel the hostility of the other party. Merely he didn't understand. He didn't have any grudges with the other party. In fact, they hadn't even met before, so why did the other party have a grudge against him? You come out. On the back of the red-crowned crane, Zhong looked down at Xian. His voice was ice-cold and didn't contain a trace of emotion. Xian glanced at Zhong and walked out of the crowd. Zhong looked down at Xian and said, "My Kuraki Academy's minimum requirement is to reach Qi-controlling realm before the age of 18. And you haven't reached Qi-controlling realm, right? Haven't reached Qi-controlling realm." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Very quickly, everyone looked at Xian. After all, Kuraki Academy's minimum requirement was to reach Qi-controlling realm before the age of 18. But Xian hadn't reached Qi-controlling realm. To be more serious, he was lying. Xian said in a low voice, "Elder Song, even though I haven't reached Qi-controlling realm, I have passed the first test." "So what?" On the back of the red-crowned crane, Zhong said coldly, "My Kuraki Academy's rule states that those who haven't reached Qi-controlling realm before the age of 18 cannot participate in the test. Even if you pass the first test, it's meaningless. Therefore, I declare that you don't have the right to participate in the test. According to the rules, you should be punished with 100 beatings and immediately kicked off Tsong Mountain." As soon as Zhong's voice fell, 2 levitation realm experts arrived before Xian. At this moment, Xian suddenly looked straight at Zhong. "Elder Song, you and I have never met before. But this is the first time we have met, yet you are targeting me. I have offended you before." He wasn't stupid, he naturally knew that the elder in front of him was targeting him. Zhong's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Targeting you? If you knew it would be like this, why did you do it in the first place?" "Zhong." Xian narrowed his eyes slightly. He suddenly recalled something. At the banquet last night he had beaten up a man, and that man was called Zhong. At this moment, after taking a closer look, he discovered that this elder Zhong had a stamped badge on his chest. Zhong also had the same badge on his chest that day. This kind of badge was usually a family badge, and it was also a symbol of status. Without a doubt, this person in front of him was Zhong's elder. Just as Xian was about to speak, a man suddenly stood up. "Xian, you really are stupid." Xian turned his head to look at the man. He looked quite familiar. It didn't take long for Qinshi to remember. It was the man who'd stood up for Mo Suiqing at the banquet that day, and he was called Li Feng. Li Feng laughed coldly. "Do you think you can look down on everyone just because you have the protection of an Guosher? Today I'll allow you to witness the strength of all of us." As he spoke, he bowed slightly to Zhong, who stood in midair. "Elder Song, this person hasn't attained the Qi-controlling realm, yet he intends to participate in the exam this time. His actions are clearly disrespecting Kuraki Academy, and for the sake of the Academy's dignity, I hope Elder Song can punish him severely." As soon as Li Feng finished speaking, another 8 men by Xian's side stood forward, and then they bowed deeply and spoke in unison, "Elder Zhong, please punish him severely." Zhong laughed coldly. "Right, the old man actually forgot about this. Drag him away and beat him to death as a warning to others." Those 2 Void Realm experts were about to attack when Xian suddenly withdrew a jade pendant, and he looked Zhong in the eyes and said, "This is Nguisher's jade pendant. I was recommended to Kuraki Academy by her. Everyone present was shocked when they heard this. And Guisher's recommendation. That's a huge amount. Even the man in embroidered clothes who'd taken the lead couldn't help but glance at Yi Xian with slight curiosity in his eyes. And Guisher was the idol of everyone in the state of Zhang's younger generation. In midair, Song Zhong's expression was extremely unsightly. He hadn't expected that Yi Xian would actually possess Enlanxio's jade pendant. I have to give face to Guisher. Li Feng became anxious when he saw Song Zhong remain silent, and he didn't even think before pointing at Yi Xian angrily. How dare you? You're just a piece of trash at the Qi transformation realm. How could you possibly be recommended by Guisher? This jade pendant is definitely fake, you. Right at this moment Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot, and when he reappeared he was already in front of Li Feng. Under everyone's gazes Yi Xian directly slapped Li Feng's face. Motherf asterisk cur. Slap. Li Feng was sent flying by this slap. Everyone was stunned. P.S. Thank you for the donations and monthly votes from my friends yesterday. I saw it and remembered it all. I'm truly grateful. Chapter 35. Hit someone. Hit someone here? Everyone was stunned. Li Feng, who was hit by Yi Xian, was stunned as well. Because he really hadn't expected that Yi Xian would attack him. After all, this was Kuraki Academy and Song Zhong was here. Even Song Zhong was slightly stunned because he hadn't expected that someone would dare to hit someone in front of him. Moreover, it was done in such a brazen manner. Meanwhile, Li Feng crawled up from the ground and he pointed angrily at Yi Xian and said fiercely, "You're actually so arrogant. You." Before he could finish speaking, Yi Xian, who was not far away from him, suddenly approached him. Then, before he could come to his senses, Yi Xian slapped him in the face again. Slap. Along with a resounding slap, Li Feng's entire body was directly slapped away. Some of the students couldn't help but glance at Yi Xian with shock when they witnessed this scene. Li Feng was at the Qi-controlling realm, but he actually couldn't fight back at all. If the first time Li Feng was hit was because of Yi Xian's sneak attack, then the second time wasn't a sneak attack, but a fair slap. Even then Li Feng still couldn't fight back at all. His strength was suppressed. Presumptuous. At this moment Song Zhong, who was sitting on the back of the red-crowned crane, suddenly shouted angrily. In an instant, an invisible pressure enveloped Yi Xian. Yi Xian raised his head and looked Song Zhong in the eyes. "Elder Song, it's not good to use public interests for personal gain, right?" Song Zhong sneered. "Using public interests for personal gain? When did I use public interests for personal gain? My Kuraki Academy's recruitment standards are very clear. Those who haven't attained the Qi-controlling realm aren't allowed to enter my academy. You're only at the transformation realm, so what wrong did the old man do to disqualify you?" As he said this, his eyes gradually turned cold. "And you publicly hit someone in my Kuraki Academy. You're looking down on my Kuraki Academy. And Guisher is my Kuraki Academy's honorary instructor. The old man believes that even if she were here, she wouldn't allow you to enter Kuraki Academy." At this moment, Li Feng suddenly crawled to his feet. He glared at Yi Xian, who was not far away. His face was filled with savagery and madness. "You lowly bastard, you actually..." Before he finished speaking, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. Li Xiu's expression changed drastically. But this time he was clearly prepared. When Yi Xian appeared in front of him, he suddenly threw a punch at Yi Xian. As he punched out, a powerful airflow wrapped around his fist like a mist. Quite powerful. Yi Xian also punched out. The two fists collided. Along with the sound of bones breaking, Li Feng was blasted over 10 m away. As soon as he fell to the ground, he started howling madly. The bones in his entire right arm had been completely shattered. Yi Xian glanced coldly at Li Feng, who was howling incessantly. "I'll fucking beat you to death if you say another word." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his head to look at Song Zhong. The latter's expression was icy cold, and his eyes were filled with undisguised killing intent. "You acted violently in front of the old man today and you completely disregard Kuraki Academy. Even Guisher can't protect you. Guards, take him away and kill him on the spot." As soon as he finished speaking, two experts at the side were about to attack. Yi Xian looked Song Zhong in the eyes. "Even though I haven't attained the Qi resistance realm, Elder Tsong has noticed that I possess the strength of a Qi resistance realm expert. Song Zhong ridiculed. Who cares if you possess the strength of a Qi resistance realm expert? The old man only knows that you haven't attained the Qi resistance realm. Since you haven't attained the Qi resistance realm, then you aren't qualified to participate in my Kuraki Academy's recruitment test. As he spoke, he lightly waved his right hand. Take him down and kill him on the spot. When they heard Song Zhong, the two Void Realm experts before Yi Xian charged directly at Yi Xian. Both of them possessed extremely formidable strengths. At the moment they attacked, Yi Xian felt a strand of invisible pressure. Yi Xian's expression instantly sank when he saw them attack. He knew that the matter couldn't be resolved peacefully. Since it was impossible to resolve peacefully, then he had to fight. When he thought up to here, a wisp of a savage expression arose on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth, and he suddenly stomped his right foot. Bang! The ground exploded apart, and a strand of formidable pressure swept out from within Yi Xian, causing the two Void Realm experts to be blasted back by over 10 m. A Qi Transformation Realm expert blasted two Void Realm experts back? Everyone present here was instantly extremely shocked when they witnessed this scene, or it should be said that they felt disbelief. After all, there was a gap of 2 realms between them. A trace of disbelief could be seen in Song Zhong's eyes as well. He was slightly surprised that Yi Xian was able to completely crush Li Feng, but he wasn't very shocked. After all, even Song Qi had lost at Yi Xian's hands. However, both of them were at the Void Realm. Even though they hadn't utilized their full strength at the beginning, it wasn't something that a Qi Transformation Realm expert could go against. Song Zhong stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment he naturally understood that this young man before him was absolutely not an ordinary young man, and it could even be said to be a genius, a rare genius. When he thought up to here, Song Zhong was slightly hesitant, because he was slightly fearful. If he really expelled a genius from Kuraki Academy, then the consequences would definitely be extremely severe. After all, he was only a tiny elder. However, enmity had already been formed, and if Yi Xian was allowed to enter Kuraki Academy, then Yi Xian would definitely take revenge in the future. The revenge of a genius. When he thought up to here, his gaze gradually turned icy cold. A genius? Kuraki Academy never lacked geniuses. I can't leave any future troubles. Song Zhong slowly clenched his right fist. In an instant, a powerful airflow suddenly appeared around Yi Xian, and as soon as this airflow appeared, Yi Xian suddenly noticed that his entire body had started to tense up. Yi Xian was shocked in his heart. Song Zhong wasn't a Void Realm expert at all, but an expert above the Void Realm. He couldn't be defeated by force. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian suddenly clenched his right fist tightly, and then he smashed it forward. Bang! The airflow around him was instantly blasted apart by this punch, and right when Song Zhong was about to attack again, Yi Xian flashed backwards and arrived at the foot of the mountain with a few leaps. A wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of Song Zhong's mouth when he witnessed this scene. Trying to flee? How laughable! As he spoke, he was about to attack. However, right at this moment, Yi Xian charged onto the 9 Palaces formation platform. Seeing this scene, the people halfway up the mountain and at the foot of the mountain were all stunned. Even Song Zhong was stunned. What was he going to do? The moment Yi Xian stepped onto the 9 Palaces platform, it violently shook, and then a beam of light suddenly shot up from the center of the platform into the sky. At this moment, countless people from Kuraki Academy looked up at the sky. 9 Palaces light pillar. Heavens, who is this? He actually wants to challenge the 9 Palaces formation? Could it be in Guosher? The 9 Palaces formation. It hasn't been activated for decades. Could it be in Guosher? Who exactly is it? Soon figures ran down from the top of the mountain. The 9 Palaces platform had been activated, and it was obvious that someone wanted to challenge the 9 Palaces formation. On the back of the red-crowned crane, Song Zhong was also stunned. He originally thought that Yi Xian was going to escape, but he didn't expect that Yi Xian would actually go onto the 9 Palaces platform and challenge the 9 Palaces formation. When it was confirmed that Yi Xian was going to challenge the 9 Palaces formation, Song Zhong suddenly laughed. Yi Xian, the old man has finally seen what it means to seek one's own death. That's good, you've saved the old man a lot of trouble by courting death like this. 9 Palaces formation. This formation was formed by 9 wooden puppets. When the 9 wooden puppets attacked together, they could instantly kill an Ascendant Realm expert. Let alone an Ascendant Realm expert. Even if he went up there, he didn't have the confidence to break the formation. In fact, he had no confidence at all. This formation didn't just test one's strength, but also one's foundation, temperament, talent, and combat ability. The ancestral master of Kuraki Academy left this formation because he was afraid that Kuraki Academy would lose its talented people, those true talents. Soon, countless people gathered around the Nine Palaces platform. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian on the platform and discussing. Lu Xiaoran led the little fatty and Yi Ling over to the Nine Palaces platform, and his expression changed slightly when he saw Yi Xian. Is Yi Xian going to challenge the Nine Palaces platform? On the other hand, even though Yi Ling, who was wrapped in a thick coat, didn't know what was going on, she was able to sense that it was definitely nothing good. Yi Ling's face was pale and extremely nervous. Uncle Lu, big brother will be fine, right? Lu Xiaoran sighed softly. He glanced at Yi Ling and hesitated for a moment before he said, "Don't worry, he'll be fine." As he spoke, he raised his head and gazed at Yi Xian, but there was a trace of worry in his eyes. The Nine Palaces formation. No one in the entire Jiang Kingdom had been able to successfully challenge the Nine Palaces formation for a few dozen years. Moreover, practically all those who had challenged the Nine Palaces formation had died miserably. Even though he knew that Yi Xian's strength wasn't bad and his origins were mysterious, it was the Nine Palaces formation. As soon as Yi Xian stepped foot onto the Nine Palaces platform, the 9 wooden figures that were standing nearby suddenly seemed as if they'd come to life. They slowly walked over to Yi Xian and surrounded Yi Xian. Yi Xian's face was emotionless, or it should be said that there was killing intent in his eyes. He hadn't expected that the situation would develop to such an extent. Song Zhong was clearly targeting him. Fight them head-on. This was Kuraki Academy, and even 10,000 of him couldn't defeat it. He had no other choice but to challenge the Nine Palaces formation. Yi Xian discarded the distracting thoughts in his mind and glanced at the surroundings. The 9 wooden figures were holding wooden swords and hadn't moved, but he'd sensed danger. Yi Xian naturally didn't dare act carelessly, and his entire body was on guard. At this moment, one of the wooden figures in front of him suddenly drew its sword, and this sword was aimed straight at the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. The moment the first wooden figure drew its sword, the crowd was in an uproar. How is this possible? Someone exclaimed. The speed of this wooden figure sword is so fast. Could it be that these 9 wooden figures are all swordsmen? 9 chi-controlling realm sword cultivators. I'm afraid even a levitation realm powerhouse can be killed instantly. On the back of the crane, Song Zhong was also a little shocked. He knew that these wooden figures weren't simple, but he didn't expect them to be existences like swordsmen. After all, the Nine Palaces platform hadn't been activated for a very long time. In the blink of an eye, Song Zhong smiled. Although these wooden figures were only at the chi-controlling realm, if they were swordsmen, then their terror could no longer be measured by the realm alone. 9 chi-controlling realm swordsmen experts, coupled with the support of the formation, were almost invincible in the chi-controlling realm, even in the levitation realm. In the entire younger generation of Jiang country, perhaps only existences at the level of Nguosher could give it a try. As for Yi Xian? Song Zhong looked at Yi Xian and sneered. Yi Xian, if you want to be in the limelight, if you want to make a name for yourself, why don't you take a look at yourself first? On the Nine Palaces platform, when the first wooden figure drew its sword, Yi Xian's first impression was fast, accurate, and ruthless. However, he was a little surprised because although this sword was fast, it was very weak. He didn't know why he felt this way, he just felt that it was very weak. In this way, under the gaze of countless people, the wooden sword directly stabbed into Yi Xian's chest. Yi Xian didn't dodge. Everyone was stunned. In the blink of an eye, under everyone's astonished gaze, the wooden sword trembled violently, then turned into a glimmer of light and sank into Yi Xian's body. Almost at the same time, the Lingshao sword in his body trembled as if something had happened. Around him, the wooden swords of the remaining 8 wooden figures also arrived in front of Yi Xian. Similarly, he didn't dodge. The moment these wooden swords came into contact with him, they completely disappeared without a trace. Not only the people around him but even Yi Xian himself was stunned. "Senior, what's going on? Did you make a move?" After a moment of silence, the mysterious woman's voice sounded. You cultivate the invincible sword body technique. You can devour swords that are weaker than the spiritual sword in your body. Do you understand? Just as Yi Xian was about to speak at this moment, Song Zhong suddenly shouted angrily. You cheated. Chapter 36. You. Song Zhong glared at Yi Xian, his face turning purple with anger. If Yi Xian wasn't on the Nine Palace platform, he would have already made his move. Because Kuraki Academy had a rule that no one was allowed to interfere once someone was on the Nine Palace platform, especially Ashenwood Academy. To put it bluntly, this test was set up by the ancestors of Kuraki Academy to prevent the old teachers from cheating and missing out on the true monstrous geniuses. Thus, even though Song Zhong's lungs were about to explode, he didn't dare to make a move. On the Nine Palace platform, Yi Xian didn't pay attention to Song Zhong. Instead, he scanned the surroundings and saw that the wooden puppets weren't moving anymore. He thought for a moment and said, "Now I pass, right?" Pass? Below the Nine Palace platform, Song Zhong sneered. You cheated and destroyed the wooden puppet swords and you call that passing? Yi Xian looked coldly at Song Zhong and interrupted him. Cheating? Do you have proof? Song Zhong said angrily. Proof? You're just a chi transformation realm cultivator. How could you make those wooden swords disappear in an instant? And you still say you didn't cheat? Yi Xian looked around and sighed. I finally understand why this array hasn't been broken for so many years. So breaking the array is cheating. See, I've learned something new. All around there was a lot of discussion. At this time, a Kuraki Academy student suddenly came in front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. You're just a chi transformation realm cultivator. How could you possibly break this Nine Palace array? Yi Xian looked straight at the student. But I already broke it. The student shook his head. There's definitely something fishy about this. As Elder Song Zhong said, you must have used some special method. Hearing this, the surrounding Kuraki Academy students all nodded. They naturally wouldn't believe that someone could break the Nine Palace array, let alone so easily. Because when they first joined Kuraki Academy, they didn't dare to have any thoughts about breaking the Nine Palace array. Even the super monstrous geniuses that led the inner court and inner court of Kuraki Academy weren't able to pass through the Nine Palaces formation. But this man in front of them, how could he? Cheating. Almost everyone was certain that Yi Xian had cheated. Yi Xian glanced at the wooden men around him. At this moment, these wooden men were no longer moving. After pondering for a moment, he asked in his heart, Senior, is this considered cheating? Are you stupid? The mysterious woman suddenly said, although you haven't comprehended the sword will, your heart of the sword is clear and you're cultivating the invincible sword body technique, using the sword to forge your body. Although you haven't mastered it yet, you're already a little mature. These wooden puppets can only be considered as low-level swordsmen. Although they're powerful with the help of the formation, you're a genuine great swordsman. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that you're a half-step grandmaster of kendo. Plus, your invincible sword body technique can absorb swords. If they're not swordsmen, you might have to spend more effort, but if they're swordsmen, you're the bane of their existence. Hearing this, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. The reason why he asked that was because he had won too easily. But now that he heard the mysterious woman's words, he finally understood. When he thought up to here, he gazed at Song Zhong and was about to speak. However, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared here, and the students in the surroundings hurriedly bowed deeply and spoke in unison, Vice Dean Li Xiu. Even Song Zhong hurriedly bowed. Vice Dean. In the Xianxia Academy there were 3 vice deans, and these 3 vice deans were all people with real power. Li Xiu. Yi Xian glanced at Li Xiu and his heart shuddered. Unfathomable. This man's strength might only be slightly lower than the 9th floor master on the cloud ship. A real big shot had appeared. However, this was also his goal. His goal of challenging the 9 Palace array was to lure the big shot of Green Mountain Academy out. Li Xiu glanced at Song Zhong. Public affairs are public affairs, private affairs are private affairs. Using public affairs for personal gain is undesirable. From now on, you don't need to be responsible for the recruitment. Go report to the logistics department at the back of the mountain. Hearing this, Li Xiu's face instantly turned pale and he hurriedly bowed respectfully. Vice Dean, this person hasn't reached the Imperial Qi realm. It wasn't my fault to stop him, Li Xiu interrupted Song Zhong. I don't know what grudges you have with him, but this recruitment is related to the future prosperity of Green Mountain Academy. How can you mix personal grudges with it? Don't say any more. Song Zhong's expression was extremely ugly, but he didn't dare to say anything. But he didn't leave either. He just retreated to the side and stared at Yi Xian. Li Xiu turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian bowed slightly. Greetings, Vice Dean. The Vice Dean sized up Yi Xian. Although I don't know what method you used to destroy those wooden swords, but with your foundation and combat power, you are already qualified to join my Verdantwood Academy. Speaking up to here, he suddenly frowned. He seemed to have noticed something. He quickly walked in front of Yi Xian and put a hand on Yi Xian's shoulder. Inside Yi Xian's body, the Ling Shao sword quietly disappeared. Soon Li Xiu withdrew his hand and looked deeply at Yi Xian. You don't have a dantian. As soon as he said this, everyone was stunned. Song Zhong was also slightly stunned, but in the blink of an eye he was so happy that he almost laughed crazily. Yi Xian was silent and he asked in his heart, Senior, why did I put away the Ling Shao sword? Can't I reveal my special dantian to others? Of course not. The mysterious woman said, this method is too shocking. If they find out that you have a sword as your dantian with your current strength, it is very likely that you will be in great danger because this is a completely new cultivation method and system. Hearing this, Yi Xian thought for a moment and felt that it was reasonable, so he nodded, I don't have a dantian. Ha! Song Zhong suddenly laughed. You don't have a dantian? In other words, you, Yi Xian, can only be a martial artist, a low-level martial artist. What qualifications do you have to join my Green Mountain Academy? Yi Xian ignored Song Zhong and looked at Li Xiu in front of him. After a moment of silence, Li Xiu said, You don't have a dantian, so it will be difficult for you to enter the Xiantian realm. The academy can't give resources to a student without a dantian, so you can't become a student of Green Mountain Academy. However, your foundation is good, so you can stay in the academy and become a martial disciple. Martial disciples were low-level handymen in the academy, who specialized in doing odd jobs for students and teachers. Martial disciple? Yi Xian's face darkened. He naturally wouldn't become a martial disciple. He wanted to join Green Mountain Academy. Just as he was about to release his battle intent, Lu Xiaoran's anxious voice suddenly rang out, Little friend Yi. Yi Xian looked over, and when he saw the appearance of Yi Ling, who was standing next to Lu Xiaoran, his expression instantly changed. At this moment, Yi Ling's head was covered in white frost, and his body emitted waves of cold air. His entire body was like a block of ice. Yi Xian was shocked. He hurriedly ran to Lu Xiaoran and picked up Yi Ling. As soon as he touched Yi Ling, the cold air coming from Yi Ling's body made him shiver. At this moment, Yi Xian was panicking out of his wits. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly looked at Li Xiu, who was not far away, and pleaded, Senior, please let the doctors of Green Mountain Academy take a look at my sister. Li Xiu glanced at Yi Ling and shook his head. There are only 3 medical grandmasters in Green Mountain Academy. How could they come out to treat someone so easily? There were less than 10 medical grandmasters in the entire country of Jiang, and Green Mountain Academy had 3. These people could be said to be national treasures, and it was too difficult to invite them. Even he might not be able to invite a medical grandmaster, and even if he could, he would have to pay a certain price. And the young man in front of him had no value at all. How could he pay a certain price to invite a medical grandmaster? Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Li Xiu shook his head. Your dantian has been shattered, and you can only advance beyond the Qi Change realm for the rest of your life. If you're willing, you can stay in Green Mountain Academy and become a martial disciple. If you're unwilling, leave immediately. With that, he flicked his sleeves and left. Yi Xian, whose dantian had been shattered, had no value to Green Mountain Academy. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly hugged Yi Ling, whose aura was getting weaker and weaker, and stood in front of Li Xiu. Yi Xian knelt on one knee and looked at Li Xiu with bloodshot eyes. If Green Mountain Academy is willing to save my sister, I, Yi Xian, will go through water and tread on fire for Green Mountain Academy, even if I have to die 10,000 times. Li Xiu looked at Yi Xian, and after a moment his eyes gradually turned cold. You're not qualified. With that, he turned and walked up the mountain. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but at this moment, Brother. Yi Ling, who was in Yi Xian's arms, suddenly said in pain, No, don't treat him. Brother, you hurry up and get up. Tears kept flowing from Yi Ling's eyes, and these tears were actually icy blue. Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian tightly. She felt wronged not for herself but for her brother. When had her brother ever knelt to someone before? No, she really didn't want to treat him anymore. Xian sat on the ground hugging Yiling, who was getting colder and colder. He hugged her tightly and his whole body trembled. The tears in his eyes were like a broken dam and he cried like a child. I'm sorry. Brother, I'm useless. I'm sorry. In Xian's arms, Yiling pressed her head against Xian's chest. The coldness in her body was getting stronger, but her aura was getting weaker and weaker. Yiling hugged Xian tightly and she raised her head to look at Xian and squeezed out a smile. Brother, don't cry. I'm already very happy to die in my brother's arms. Xian hugged Yiling tightly, and his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Inside his body, Ling Xiao's sword kept trembling, and his whole body was already on the verge of collapse. Yiling held Xian's cheeks with both hands and looked at Xian. As she looked, she suddenly smiled. Brother, after I die, bring my ashes with you. I want to accompany you for the rest of my life. Also, live well, you must live well. As she said that, she slowly closed her eyes and her aura became weaker and weaker. Brother, in my next life I'll still be your little sister. Chapter 37. Yiling's breath became weaker and weaker until it was almost undetectable. Xian hugged Yiling tightly as his body trembled uncontrollably. At the corner of his mouth, blood continuously flowed out. All around, countless people stared at the pair of brother and sister. Looking at Xian and his sister, Lu Xiaoran's expression was complicated. He didn't expect things to turn out this way. He didn't expect that Xian didn't have a dantian. Without a dantian, it meant that he would never be able to condense qi for the rest of his life. At this moment, Song Zhong suddenly sneered, "Someone come, chase this pair of brother and sister down Song Mountain." Just as several experts rushed towards Xian and his sister, an old man quietly appeared in front of Xian. The old man's hair was unkempt, his clothes were tattered, and his body exuded a pungent smell of alcohol. Seeing the sudden appearance of this old man, Song Zhong frowned because he didn't know how this old man appeared. The strong men who had been dashing toward Xian and his younger sister also stopped. Song Zhong stared at the old man. "Who are you?" The old man didn't answer Song Zhong but looked at Xian and his sister. He sized up Yiling and said, "I can save her." Hearing this, Xian suddenly raised his head. The old man looked straight at Xian. "Are you willing to enter my Songlan Academy?" Songlan Academy? The crowd was in an uproar. This was Songlan Academy's mortal enemy. No, the current Songlan Academy was no longer qualified to be Songlan Academy's opponent. Song Zhong stared at the old man. "You are from Songlan Academy." The old man ignored Song Zhong and only looked at Xian. Xian stared straight at the old man. "As long as you can save my sister, I, Xian, will not let down Songlan Academy." The old man pointed at Song Shan with his right hand. From the foot of the mountain, there are a total of 36 corpses of Songlan Academy's students. Every one of them died miserably. In the future you may become one of them. Xian looked straight at the old man. "As long as you can save my sister, I, Xian, will have no regrets even if I become one of them." The old man looked at Xian for a long time. "Did you bring back the corpses hanging on the Shaodao and Song Mountain?" Xian looked straight at the old man. "If you can save my sister in this life, I will do everything in my power." The old man took a deep look at Xian. "From now on, you are a student of my Songlan Academy." After saying that, he squatted down and placed one hand on Yiling's pulse. After a moment, he took a deep look at Yiling without saying anything. His thumb gently touched a pitch-black ring on his index finger. In the blink of an eye, a tiny flame lotus appeared in his palm. Along with the appearance of this flame lotus, the surrounding temperature suddenly rose. "Fire spirit!" someone in the crowd exclaimed. Song Zhong's face was also filled with astonishment. In this world there were some natural oddities, and these natural oddities were extremely precious existences. For example, this fire spirit was a priceless existence. No, this wasn't something that could be bought with money. Even in Song Mu Academy, this kind of natural oddities was extremely rare. Under everyone's gaze, the old man flicked his finger and the fire spirit directly entered between Yiling's eyebrows. Soon the cold air on Yiling's body receded like a receding tide. The old man's right hand was tightly placed on Yiling's shoulder. A mysterious force was continuously transmitted into Yiling's body. Gradually, under the nervous gaze of Yixian, Yiling's face became a little rosy. Yixian was overjoyed when he witnessed this scene. After around 15 minutes, Yiling slowly opened her eyes. Yixian hurriedly grabbed Yiling's hand and spoke in a trembling voice. How is it? Yiling glanced at the surroundings in a daze. In the end, she looked at Yixian and tears flowed down her face. Big brother, I'm not dead yet? Yixian smiled, but his face was covered in tears. Meanwhile, a tiny flame suddenly condensed between Yiling's eyebrows. The old man said, the fire spirit has temporarily suppressed the cold air within her body. But according to my estimation, it can only suppress it for a month at most. After a month, the fire spirit will vanish. Yixian pulled his younger sister, Yiling, up and Yiling bowed deeply to the old man. Yixian said, I, Yixian, will remember this kindness for the rest of my life. The old man nodded slightly. Come back to Zhonglan Academy with me. Yixian nodded. All right. The three of them were about to leave when Zhongzhong suddenly ridiculed. How laughable. The Zhonglan Academy has actually fallen to the point of picking up the trash that my Kuraki Academy doesn't want. Oh, it's understandable. After all, who would join Zhonglan Academy now? The old man glanced at Zhongzhong, but he didn't speak and just ignored Zhongzhong. Just like that, under the gaze of countless people, the old man left with Yixian and his younger sister. Zhongzhong laughed without the slightest restraint behind the old man. How laughable. How laughable. The Zhonglan Academy has fallen to the point of picking up the trash that my Kuraki Academy doesn't want. Right at this moment, a white figure suddenly flashed over from afar, and everyone here was stunned when they saw this white figure. It's Nguesher. Someone spoke these words and the surroundings instantly seethed with excitement. Nguesher. He was the representative of the younger generation of the Jiang Kingdom, and he could be said to be the idol of everyone in the younger generation of the Jiang Kingdom. Countless people gazed at the white figure with burning gazes, and their eyes were filled with admiration and respect, because Xianxia was the pride of the entire Jiang Kingdom. She was outstanding to the point others couldn't feel envious of her. Everyone watched as Xianxia stopped before the old man and Yixian, and then her gaze descended onto Yixian. I'm sorry. Yixian shook his head. It's none of your business. Xianxia stretched out her right hand. The jade pendant. Yixian hesitated for a moment before he said, I'll keep it. Xianxia looked Yixian in the eyes. Why? Yixian met her gaze. It's a form of friendship. Xianxia gazed at Yixian for a long time before she nodded, and then she gazed at the old man by Yixian's side. The old man glanced at Xianxia and sighed softly. As expected of the most outstanding person in the Jiang Kingdom. You've already arrived at such a level. Xianxia fell silent for a short moment. The Jiang Kingdom can't fall into chaos. The old man shook his head and chuckled. 36 corpses are still hanging on that Xiaodao. Xianxia fell silent. The old man didn't say anything else. He turned around and walked down the mountain. Yixian cupped his fists towards Xianxia. Farewell. As she finished speaking, she pulled Yiling along and followed after him. Xianxia's eyes slowly closed where she stood. Meanwhile, Zhongzhong hurriedly walked in front of Xianxia and bowed respectfully. Teacher and I. Right at this moment, Zhongzhong suddenly flew over 10 meters away. Everyone was shocked. They looked at Xianxia with eyes filled with puzzlement. Because the person who attacked was Xianxia. Xianxia glanced coldly at Zhongzhong, who was over 10 meters away. You dare to make things difficult for someone I recommended? Zhongzhong was horrified in his heart. He was about to say something when a spear tore through the air. One of Zhongzhong's arms flew off. Blood sprayed. The surroundings were deathly silent. Everyone looked at Xianxia with astonishment. What's she doing? Under everyone's gaze, Xianxia raised her head and looked at Song Mountain. Li Xiu, get down here. As her voice fell, she lightly flicked her jade-like finger. A silver spear soared into the sky. Around the silver spear, an enormous dragon that was over 100 meters long suddenly appeared. The enormous dragon soared into Tsong Mountain. A dragon's roar shook the entire Tsong Mountain. A moment of silence. Boom. Above Tsong Mountain, an earth-shattering explosion suddenly resounded. Then a horrified voice sounded. Spear intent manifestation. You've actually reached the Spear Dao Grandmaster. Spear Dao Grandmaster. As soon as these words came out, the surroundings were filled with gasps. Spear Dao Grandmaster. And Lanxiu had already reached the Spear Dao Grandmaster? She was only 19 years old. A 19-year-old Spear Dao Grandmaster. Everyone was petrified. Not to mention the history of the Jiang Kingdom, even the history of the previous dynasty had never seen such a thing. In the truest sense of the word, it was unprecedented. In next to no time, Li Xiu appeared before Lanxiu, and his expression was extremely serious. A Spear Dao Grandmaster wasn't terrifying. What was terrifying was a Spear Dao Grandmaster at such a young age. In the history of Kuraki Academy, only a single person could compare to such terrifying natural talent, and it was Gu Qianxin who'd saved Kuraki Academy all those years ago. That legendary figure of Kuraki Academy. Yet now, Lanxiu wasn't inferior to him in the slightest. Li Xiu restrained his thoughts. Country scholar, and why are you so angry? Lanxiu glanced at Li Xiu. I can't stand the sight of you. As soon as she finished speaking, the tip of her foot tapped the ground lightly, and her figure directly floated forward. At the same time, the spear in her hand shot out violently like a bolt of lightning. Li Xiu's gaze was wretched as he stood before Lanxiu, and he didn't dare be careless in the slightest. He took half a step back, and in the next moment he stretched out his right hand and made a roll. This roll caused the wind in the surroundings to suddenly and swiftly converge towards him. In an instant, a whirlpool had appeared before him, and within the whirlpool were countless wind blades that were thin like cicada wings. Meanwhile the spear arrived. Bang! An enormous bang that shook the heavens resounded abruptly. In the blink of an eye, the countless wind blades were blasted into pieces while a figure retreated explosively. This figure was exactly Li Xiu, and he'd retreated over 100 m back. As soon as he stopped moving, a wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. At the same time, his entire right arm had cracked apart into the shape of a spiderweb. The surroundings were deathly silent. Lanxiu had defeated a vice dean of Kuraki Academy. Everyone in the surroundings didn't know Li Xiu's true cultivation, but since he was able to become the vice dean of Kuraki Academy, then how could he be trash? It could be said that Li Xiu was at least at the Nether Passage realm, or perhaps even higher. Yet now he'd lost to Lanxiu. Li Xiu stared fixedly at Lanxiu. There was no flames of rage in his eyes, and there was only deep fear. Others didn't know what Lanxiu's background represented, but he did. So, when Lanxiu hadn't joined Kuraki Academy all those years ago, Kuraki Academy didn't dare go too far. After all, when it came to a level like Kuraki Academy, some geniuses were either roped in or destroyed. On the other hand, Kuraki Academy didn't dare to have any ill intentions towards Lanxiu. Lanxiu didn't attack again. She glanced at Grey Mountain and shook her head. From this moment onward, I have nothing to do with Kuraki Academy. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Li Xiu's expression changed drastically when he heard Lanxiu. Country scholar, and you absolutely can't do that. If I've offended you in any way, then I apologize. Please. In the distance, Lanxiu had vanished from everyone's fields of vision. Li Xiu's expression was extremely unsightly as he stood on the spot. Right at this moment, the 8 wooden figures on the distant 9 palace platforms suddenly returned to their positions, and then a figure suddenly appeared on the platform in the blink of an eye. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed drastically when they saw this figure. Because this figure was Gu Qianxin, who'd left the kingdom of Jiang for almost 300 years. Along with Gu Qianxin's appearance, all the higher-ups of Kuraki Academy were alarmed. Besides the dean who was in closed-door cultivation, the other 2 vice deans and some supreme elders had rushed over to the platform, and then they bowed in succession. Gu Qianxin glanced at the surroundings and grinned. It's rare that I'm late. Where's the person who broke the formation? His foundation is solid like a rock at such a young age. Not only has he comprehended battle intent, he's even a great swordsman. It's rare that he's cultivated both the martial arts and the sword to such an extent. Chapter 38. 3 words were rare. The surroundings were deathly silent. Gu Qianxin frowned slightly when he noticed the unusual atmosphere, and then he glanced at the surroundings. What's wrong? Meanwhile, Li Xiu stepped forward, bowed deeply to Gu Qianxin, and then recounted everything that had happened earlier. He didn't dare conceal anything at all. The surroundings grew even more silent after he finished listening. Some of the supreme elders and vice deans of Kuraki Academy glanced coldly at Li Xiu with extremely hostile expressions. If Gu Qianqian's afterimage wasn't here, then they might have flared up by now. A short while later, Gu Qianqian shook his head lightly. This formation was created by Dean Mu all those years ago. Later on, I felt that it was slightly weak, so I transformed it into a swordsman. Even if he cheated, he's still capable of breaking through this formation. Moreover, that person didn't cheat. Even though he doesn't have a dantian, it means that he's extraordinary and should be said to be terrifying. Don't all of you think it's terrifying that he was able to break through this formation without a dantian? Li Xiu's face turned slightly pale when he heard this, and his face turned even paler when he recalled Xiu's attitude from before. Who was Xiu? With such a terrifying genius, would the person she favored be mediocre? Of course not. Li Xiu laughed bitterly when he thought up to this point, and then he bowed deeply to Gu Qianqian. I was blind. Gu Qianqian shook his head. Fate can't be forced. As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings. I left Pine Prefecture a few hundred years ago, and I left this afterimage behind because I wanted to see if anyone would be able to break through the formation that Dean Mu and I left behind in a short period of time. I never expected that it would be like this. Forget it. It's difficult for me to interfere in the matters of Kuraki Academy now. All of you, good luck. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure gradually became ethereal. Everyone hurriedly bowed deeply when they witnessed this scene. Farewell, Dean Gu. It didn't take long for Gu Qianqian's afterimage to vanish completely. The other two vice deans, the instructors and the elders gazed at Li Xiu. Li Xiu laughed bitterly. From this moment onward, I'll go meditate on the cliff of reflection. Once the dean emerges from his closed-door cultivation, I'll be at his disposal. As he spoke, he looked at a white-haired old man not far away. Brother Mo Song, I'll leave everything in the academy to you for the time being. Mo Song was the other vice dean of Kuraki Academy. Mo Song sighed in a low voice. This time you really didn't handle this well. Forget it, there's no point in saying anything now. Go reflect on the cliff of reflection and wait for the dean to come out. Wait. Right at this moment, another black-robed old man suddenly stood out. He was the other vice dean of Kuraki Academy, Ku Mu. The others in the surroundings gazed at Ku Mu when they heard him. Ku Mu said coldly, he's just a pretty good monster. Him not being able to join our Kuraki Academy is his loss, not ours. Forgive me for speaking bluntly, but that person doesn't have the qualifications for us to punish a vice principal. Everyone fell silent. Ku Mu continued. If my Kuraki Academy were to punish Li Xiu, then wouldn't we become the laughingstock of the world? Moreover, although he's not bad, he doesn't have the qualifications to make my Kuraki Academy sacrifice a vice dean. Send the order that Yi Xian is trash that my Kuraki Academy doesn't want. We want the world to know that no matter how monstrous a genius he is, he's still trash before our Kuraki Academy. The elders and instructors of Kuraki Academy exchanged glances. Some were hesitant, but some immediately expressed their agreement. Ku Mu continued. Since the establishment of Dean Gu, when has our Kuraki Academy ever lowered our heads to anyone? We didn't in the past and we won't in the future. As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings. Students of Kuraki Academy, remember that Yi Xian has joined Kuraki Academy. Next year I want all of you to hang his head on the Xiaodao. Our Kuraki Academy wants the world to know that not joining our Kuraki Academy is the greatest loss Yi Xian has ever suffered in his lifetime. Countless students of Kuraki Academy bowed and spoke in unison. We'll definitely hang Yi Xian's head on the Xiaodao. Ku Mu nodded lightly when he heard this, and the other elders including Li Xiu and the others nodded successively as well. Soon the news that Yi Xian had joined Kuraki Academy spread throughout the capital. Someone that Kuraki Academy didn't want had been picked up by Kuraki Academy. Yi Xian's name spread throughout the capital. Of course, it wasn't a good reputation but a joke. Not only had Yi Xian become a joke, but even Kuraki Academy had become a joke. Kuraki Academy has come to pick up the students that Kuraki Academy doesn't want. This sentence was spreading throughout the entire imperial capital. Kuraki Academy's fame and popularity once again reached its peak. On a remote mountain path, Yi Xian carried Yi Ling on his back and followed closely behind an old man not far away from him. The old man would take a few gulps of wine from his gourd every few steps. Brother, my body feels warm. Comfortable. Yes. That's good. Brother, promise me that you won't kneel down for me in the future, okay? Yi Xian fell silent. Yi Ling tightly wrapped her arms around Yi Xian's neck. Brother, I'd rather die than have you kneel down for others. I'd rather kneel down for the world than have you die. Brother, in the next life I'll still be your little sister, okay? No, in the next life, the next life, the next life. A quarter of an hour later, the old man in the distance stopped. Yi Xian also stopped. Not far away from the three of them were two small mountains. They weren't very tall, only a few hundred meters tall. Compared to Kuraki Academy's Tsong Mountain, they were pitifully small. In between the two small mountain peaks there was a small path. Beside the small path there was a stone tablet. The stone tablet was surrounded by overgrown weeds, and on top of the stone tablet, there were 4 big black words. Songlan Academy. These 4 words were somewhat desolate. Under the old man's guidance, Yi Xian carried his little sister through the Xiao Dao. At the end of the Xiao Dao was another mountain, but it wasn't very tall. It was only slightly taller than the 2 mountains behind them. At the top of this mountain some buildings could be vaguely seen. The old man walked forward slowly, while Yi Xian carried his little sister and followed. At this moment the old man suddenly said, I can't remember how many years it has been. You're the first person who was willing to join Kuraki Academy. Behind the old man Yi Xian was slightly stunned. In an instant he said in astonishment, Senior, may I ask how many students are there in Kuraki Academy? Including you two. The old man didn't even turn his head. Yi Xian was stunned in place. After a while he hurriedly carried his little sister to the old man's side. Senior, are you sure you're not joking? The old man glanced at Yi Xian. Do you think I'm joking with you? No, Yi Xian gulped. Kuraki Academy including me really only has 2 students? The old man nodded. Seeing that the old man didn't seem to be joking, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. 2 people. This. He was already somewhat speechless. The old man lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder. Don't worry, I've already recruited. Oh no, I've already recruited 2 more people. They'll be arriving soon. At that time Kuraki Academy will have 4 people. After saying that he walked towards the distant mountain peak. Yi Xian was stunned in place. On Yi Xian's back Yi Ling glanced at the old man in the distance and said softly, Brother, it seems like you've been tricked. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He saved you. For this, brother is willing to jump into any trap. After saying that he carried Yi Ling on his back and hurriedly followed. Soon, under the old man's lead, the 3 of them arrived at the mountain peak. At the mountain peak, there was only a dilapidated hall and a dozen or so houses. The paint on the outside of the hall had almost peeled off, and there were even a few large cracks on the walls. Not only that, the hall only had 1 door. And at a glance, there were weeds everywhere. Yi Xian turned to look at the old man. The old man said, Kuraki Hall is where we usually discuss matters and entertain guests. However, it's been many years since it's been used for such matters. And it's a little abandoned, clean it up later. Yi Xian, the old man pointed to the back of the hall. The houses over there are all empty. You can find anyone to stay in. I'm a little tired, so I'll go rest first. After saying that, the old man disappeared without looking back. In the same place, Yi Xian carried Yi Ling on his back and looked at the dilapidated hall in front of him, speechless for a long time. He knew that Kuraki Academy might not be that good, but he didn't expect it to be this bad. No, it's not just bad, it's practically going to close down. An old man of unknown identity and 2 students. Is this AF * King Academy? It's probably an orphanage. After a long time Yi Xian sighed softly. At this time, Yi Ling suddenly jumped down from his back and pulled Yi Xian's hand. Brother, go choose our rooms. I'll clean this hall. Yi Xian was a little hesitant. Yi Ling jumped on the spot and giggled. It's not cold anymore. Brother, go quickly, I'll be fine. Seeing that Yi Ling didn't seem to be lying, Yi Xian nodded. He gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. Take your time. Brother will go pick 2 rooms and find something to eat. Then I'll help you. Yi Ling nodded obediently. Yi Xian smiled and turned to leave. As for Yiling, he entered the hall and found a broom to start sweeping. About 100 feet behind the main hall, there were buildings scattered all over the place. From the outside, these buildings must have been very glorious in the past, but now, they were simply unsightly, especially the house in front of him. Half of the roof had disappeared. Yi Xian shook his head and walked through the xiaodao that was already covered with weeds. Suddenly he stopped because not far from his right, there was a decent courtyard. This courtyard wasn't as dilapidated as the courtyards in front of him, and there were some flowers and plants around it. It looked very good. Yi Xian was delighted. I can let my sister live here. After saying that, he walked over quickly. Soon he pushed the door open and entered. The moment he pushed the door open, he was stunned. Not far in front of him there was a pool. At this moment in the pool, a woman was leaning against the wall of the pool. Her legs were stretched out in a shape. The water was very clear, so clear that he could see everything at the bottom of the pool. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that the woman was naked. The woman just looked at Yi Xian calmly. Yi Xian was stunned and then turned around. At this moment he felt a terrifying aura coming from behind him. Then a blade as thin as a cicada's wing was placed on his neck. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. He quickly raised his hands. I only like men. P.S. New writing is very slow and very serious. Therefore it's impossible to write a lot in a day. If I write too much, it must be nonsense. Therefore many people ask me to add more chapters. This concubine can't do that. The only thing I can do is to update steadily and add chapters from time to time. I hope everyone can understand. Chapter 39. At this moment time seemed to freeze. Yi Xian's expression was grave and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. The strength of the woman behind him had exceeded his expectations. If he had not turned around just now, he might have been able to fight against her. However, because he had turned around, he had lost the initiative and was now in a dilemma. After a moment of silence, the knife on his neck suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Xian did not leave. He turned around and saw that the woman had already put on her clothes. The woman was wearing a long black dress with mountains and rivers painted on it. She had a slender figure and a black sash was tied around her waist, accentuating her slender figure. Her eyes were like water, but they carried a faint coldness as if they could see through everything. So beautiful. That was Yi Xian's first impression and feeling. When he thought of some of the scenes from before, Yi Xian immediately felt a little hot. Although Yi Xian had never been close to a woman, it did not mean that he was not a man. He had everything that a normal man should have. The woman slowly walked in front of Yi Xian. She just looked at Yi Xian, causing Yi Xian's scalp to go numb. Yi Xian and the woman looked at each other, and in his eyes, there was only disgust. It was as if looking at a woman's body was a very shameful thing. The Jiang country was not very open-minded, and women were very concerned about their innocence. Yi Xian also knew this. The reason why he was like this was naturally because he wanted to avoid trouble. Moreover, this matter was mainly because he was in the wrong. However, he also felt very wronged. Only the heavens knew that there were other people here, and this woman was bathing in broad daylight. However, she was really beautiful. If he could look at her a few more times, he would not mind. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, he was shocked. Did he want to look at her a few more times? At this moment, the woman suddenly spoke. Who are you? Her voice was cold and there was a trace of killing intent in her eyes. Yi Xian hurriedly collected his thoughts and said, Yi Xian, new student. After saying this, he took a few steps back. It did not seem like he was trying to escape, but rather to get away from the woman. Moreover, there was a hint of disgust in his eyes. Noticing Yi Xian's actions, the woman frowned. Am I that unsightly? Yi Xian glanced at the woman and didn't say anything. However, he took 2 steps back. This was enough to explain everything. The woman sized up Yi Xian and shook her head. You're a handsome man, but you're gay. How do men get along with men? Yi Xian was speechless. Seeing that Yi Xian did not answer, the woman did not pursue the matter. She looked at Yi Xian with pity, then turned around and walked to her room. Seeing that the woman had left, Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief. This matter was over. Yi Xian hurriedly left the courtyard and found 2 rooms at the side. After cleaning the rooms, he went to the back mountain for a stroll. When he returned, he already had some game in his hands. Surviving in the wild was something that Yi Xian was very good at because he had once relied on hunting game to support himself and his sister. Yi Xian arrived at Kanglan Palace. At this moment Yi Ling had already cleaned up the palace. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Ling hurriedly ran to Yi Xian and smiled sweetly. "Brother." Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. "Tired?" Yi Ling shook her head. "Not tired." Yi Xian smiled. "Clean up the tables at the side. Brother will go cook." Hearing this, Yi Ling's eyes lit up with anticipation. Cook. She loved eating Yi Xian's cooking the most, and it could be said that even the chefs of the Yi family couldn't compare to Yi Xian's cooking. An hour later in Kanglan Palace, Yi Xian and his sister Yi Ling sat before a large shabby table. There were 4 or 5 appetizers on the table, and their fragrance assailed their nostrils. The siblings looked at each other and smiled. Just as they were about to pick up their chopsticks, a figure walked over from the side. It was the old man. The old man's entire body emitted an unpleasant smell of alcohol. His clothes seemed as if they hadn't been washed for many years, and his original appearance was unrecognizable. The old man didn't stand on ceremony and sat at the head of the table. He was just about to pick up his chopsticks when another person walked over from the side. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he saw who it was. It was the woman he'd met earlier. The woman sat on the old man's left. She glanced at the dishes on the table and then looked at Yi Xian. "Did you cook for me?" Yi Xian. Yi Ling blinked. She glanced at Yi Xian and then at the woman. The woman didn't say anything else. She picked up her chopsticks and picked up a small piece of mushroom. After a while she nodded. "Not bad." Hearing this, the old man picked up a piece of mushroom and put it in his mouth. After chewing, he glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. "All right. From now on, Kanglan Academy's meals will be yours." The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He wanted to beat someone up. At this moment, Yi Ling suddenly tilted her head and looked at the old man. "But my brother is a student." The old man glanced at Yi Ling. "Cooking is also a form of cultivation." Yi Ling. Yi Xian couldn't stand it anymore. "Senior, Dean." The old man turned to look at Yi Xian. "Call me Dean Ji." Yi Xian nodded. "Dean Ji, for such a big academy, shouldn't we hire a few handymen?" The old man asked in return. "Are you paying?" Yi Xian was stunned for a while before saying, "Shouldn't you be paying?" Dean Ji shook his head. "I don't have money. I can't even afford to drink." Yi Xian. The woman didn't say anything. She just ate. She kept on eating. The speed at which she ate made Yi Xian and his sister dumbfounded. That speed was really abnormally fast. It was as if she hadn't eaten for more than 10 days. After a while, all the dishes on the table were swept clean. The woman licked her chopsticks. Then she turned to look at Yi Xian. "Is there anything else?" Yi Xian. Yi Ling put down her chopsticks. Then she said, "There's still something left. I'll go wash it." After saying that, she turned and ran to the back of the hall. Yi Xian asked in a low voice, "Is it safe here?" Old man Ji nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian hesitated. Then he asked again, "Dean Ji, since it's an academy, there's naturally a place to learn." "No." Old man Ji answered directly. "Self-study." Yi Xian. Martial Arts Hall. At this moment the woman suddenly said. She was still licking her chopsticks. Old man Ji looked at Yi Xian. "There's a martial arts hall in the back mountain. There are some martial arts notes left by former students. As for martial arts techniques, if you're lucky you might be able to find 1 or 2. Sigh. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. "I'll go cook." After saying that, he turned and left. Next to the table, only the woman and the old man were left. The woman put down her chopsticks. "Where did you find it?" Old man Ji took a sip of wine and said, "I picked it up at Kuraki Academy." The woman was silent for a moment. Then she asked again, "Why him?" The old man said, "He has potential." The woman said indifferently, "I alone am enough." The old man's hand trembled slightly. After a moment he picked up the wine gourd and took a sip. Then he said softly, "And Ji, you're carrying too much." The woman said indifferently, "This is my life and also my responsibility." After saying that, she turned to look outside the hall. Although they're dead, their souls are imprisoned in their bodies. As long as they're not brought back, they won't be able to rest in peace. And big brother, second brother. Father. The old man slowly closed his eyes. You're the only bloodline of the Ji family. The woman chuckled. Then I'm even more duty-bound. The old man shook his head. Those two in the country of Jiang, probably only in Lanxiu can suppress them. The woman stood up. Where there's a will, there's a will. After saying that, she walked into the distance. When she reached the entrance of the hall, she suddenly stopped and said with a smile, the worst outcome is just another corpse of Tsang Mountain's Xiao Dao. After saying that, she disappeared into the distance. Inside the hall, only the sound of the old man drinking wine could be heard. At night, after Yi Ling fell asleep, Yi Xian entered the World Prison Pagoda. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and asked, Senior, am I a great swordsman? Yes. The mysterious woman answered. Why? Yi Xian was a little puzzled because he still hadn't been able to release sword light. The mysterious woman said, what you're lacking now is only the realm. As long as you reach the qi-resisting realm and condense the qi in your body, with your current body foundation and your attainments in the sword, you can use sword qi at any time. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, then my battle intent. Do you know martial arts? The mysterious woman asked. Yi Xian shook his head. The mysterious woman said, your current situation is that you've comprehended battle intent in advance, but you haven't gone through the process of martial arts, so you're not a martial arts grandmaster at all. Moreover, to become a real martial arts grandmaster, you still need to materialize battle intent. The current you doesn't have that ability yet. What you need to do now is to accumulate the basic knowledge of martial arts. Of course, you can't slack off on your swordsmanship. Also, you can start looking for swords. Spiritual swords. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Where was he going to look for spiritual swords? He couldn't afford it. This was a big problem. After a while, Yi Xian began to cultivate. Apart from practicing his swordsmanship, he also practiced his fists and kicks. The only martial technique he knew was the collapsing fist. After adding the battle will, he discovered that the power of the collapsing fist had undergone a qualitative change. If he added battle intent, the collapsing fist would be at least lower mystic level. At this moment he truly realized how terrifying battle intent was, and if he comprehended sword intent, then the might of the deciding life and death sword would probably be even more terrifying. The night passed and Yi Xian suddenly rushed down the mountain at dawn the next day. Because old man Ji told him that a woman surnamed and was looking for him. In next to no time Yi Xian arrived at the foot of the mountain, and Yi Xian saw a woman in white clothes that were spotless. She was breathtakingly beautiful. Lanxiu. Yi Xian walked over to Lanxiu and smiled, Miss N. Lanxiu nodded and was about to speak when a sloppy man walked over from nearby. The man carried a black iron rod on his back and he walked unsteadily. When the man saw Lanxiu, his eyes instantly lit up. Beautiful, a beauty. Yi Xian suddenly stood in front of Lanxiu and glanced at the man. I'm pretty handsome too. You can watch for free. Chapter 40. Lanxiu, who stood behind Yi Xian, glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak. On the other hand, the man who stood before Yi Xian sized up Yi Xian and said, Kid, it looks to me like you're asking for a beating. As soon as he finished speaking, the man suddenly smashed his iron rod towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian clenched his right fist tightly and battle intent condensed on his fist. He punched. The sound of an explosion suddenly rang out. Bang. Along with this explosion, the man was pushed over 10 back along with his iron rod, and his pitch-black iron rod was trembling violently. On the other hand, Yi Xian had moved over 3 back as well, and his right hand was trembling slightly. The man who stood before Yi Xian glanced at his iron rod, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. You have some ability. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly tossed his iron rod towards Yi Xian. A sharp whistle resounded through the air. Yi Xian's face was emotionless. When the iron rod arrived before him, he suddenly smashed his right fist forward. It was just a simple punch. Fist crush. A single punch could shatter metal and shatter rocks. Bang. The iron rod shook violently and was blasted flying back. However, right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and in the blink of an eye, a strand of cold light shot towards Yi Xian's throat. Danger. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. This was his first feeling and he didn't dare conceal it any longer. He twisted his right hand lightly. Boom. A low and heavy sword howl resounded, and in the blink of an eye, bang! A silhouette was forced to retreat over 100 feet. It was that man. After the man stopped moving, he gazed at Yi Xian with astonishment. Swordsman? You're actually a swordsman. Yi Xian glanced at the man. Do you still want to fight me? The man chuckled. Yes, of course. When have I, Mo Yunqi, ever feared anyone in my lifetime? Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, a cold light flashed. The man called Mo Yunqi's expression changed greatly. You didn't even say anything before starting the fight. As he spoke, he swung the iron rod in his hand upwards. Hard, hard, hard. Bang. An ear-piercing sound of metal clashing rang out, and in the blink of an eye, Mo Yunqi's entire body was pushed back a distance of over 100 feet. This time Yi Xian didn't attack again. Instead, he retreated to Enlanxio's side and glanced at her. I forgot myself. Enlan smiled without saying a word. Yi Xian's expression was rather unnatural, or rather, slightly embarrassed. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly looked towards the nearby Mo Yunqi and said, Let's continue fighting. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out. Mo Yunqi. Enlanxio glanced at the distant Yi Xian. It was unknown what she was thinking. After around 10 minutes passed, a voice suddenly resounded, That's enough. It was Old Man Ji's voice. As soon as this voice resounded, Old Man Ji appeared not too far away from Enlanxio. He nodded slightly to her and then he gazed at Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi. However, they didn't stop. Old Man Ji suddenly gazed at Enlanxio. Guoshiren, do you really care about him? Of course he was referring to Yi Xian. Enlanxio lightly combed her hair behind her ear. Yes. Old Man Ji's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this. Guoshiren, do you know what you're talking about? Enlanxio chuckled lightly. Just because he dared to stand before a few thousand troops of the Tang Empire, he's qualified to be my friend. Of course we're friends now. Friend. Old Man Ji sighed lightly. In the entire kingdom of Jiang, there were probably less than a handful of people who were qualified to be friends with this little girl. Bang. Meanwhile, an explosion suddenly resounded from afar, and then Mo Yunqi was blasted over 30 m away. Yi Xian didn't attack again and he retreated to Enlanxio's side instead. Mo Yunqi glanced at Yi Xian and Enlanxio and he didn't attack as well. Old Man Ji glanced at Mo Yunqi. Both of you are students of Tsonglan Academy from now on. Both Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi were stunned. Students of Tsonglan Academy? Mo Yunqi pointed at Yi Xian. He's a student of Tsonglan Academy as well? Old Man Ji spoke indifferently. What? Is there a problem? Mo Yunqi glanced at Old Man Ji. Old man, how many students are there in our Tsonglan Academy? Old Man Ji said, There's a total of 3 including you. However, there's another one coming soon. By then there'll be 4. Mo Yunqi was dumbstruck and he turned around and left quite some time later. I'm going to Kuraki Academy. Old Man Ji glanced at Mo Yunqi. Do you not want the second half of sweeping staff technique? In the distance Mo Yunqi stopped and he turned around to look at Old Man Ji. Old man great-grandpa won academy for students. Are you sure this academy has a future? Old Man Ji said indifferently. You've already signed the application form for Tsonglan Academy. Even if you go to Kuraki Academy now, they won't want you. Hearing this, Mo Yunqi pointed at Old Man Ji angrily. Old man, you're tricking me. Old Man Ji shrugged. I didn't force you back then. You were the one who begged me to let you join Tsonglan Academy. Hearing this, Mo Yunqi was so angry that he almost vomited blood. You still have the nerve to say that? You said that Tsonglan Academy is about the same as Kuraki Academy. It's about the same. Old Man Ji said, They're both in the imperial capital, they're both academies. Is there a problem? Mo Yunqi was so angry that he almost breathed his last. This is what you call about the same? This is the difference between heaven and earth. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't win, he probably would have fought. At this moment, Old Man Ji flicked his finger, and a black scroll fell in front of Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi glanced at it and in the next moment his eyes lit up and he hurriedly put the scroll away. Old Man Ji pointed at the top of the mountain. Mo Yunqi was a little conflicted and he glanced at the scroll in his hand. In the end he sighed deeply and then walked towards the top of the mountain reluctantly. However, when he passed by Yi Xian and Xianxia, he suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Let's fight after I finish practicing this second half. Yi Xian shrugged. Any time. Fight. He liked it too. Not far away, old man Ji suddenly said, Kid, this is the imperial capital, you'd better keep a low profile. Mo Yunqi snorted coldly. Low profile? Old man, I'm so outstanding, do I need to keep a low profile? I'm not boasting, but in the entire imperial capital, is there anyone more outstanding than me? When he spoke up to here, he glanced at the sky and spoke heroically. Isn't the #1 genius of our Jiang kingdom that Xianxia? That was in the past. Now that I, Mo Yunqi, have risen and Xianxia is nothing. Just you wait, I'll beat her until she cries. Yi Xian had a rather strange expression on his face. Old man Ji shook his head. It's the first time I've seen someone court death like this. Mo Yunqi was just about to speak when a white afterimage suddenly appeared behind him. Mo Yunqi's expression changed drastically, and he swiftly turned around before smashing the iron rod in his hand down. Bang! Along with an explosion, Mo Yunqi's figure was blasted flying. In the next moment the ground trembled violently and then a strange scene appeared. A figure was smashing the ground incessantly while howling incessantly. Just like that, this continued for an entire 15 minutes before the figure finally stopped. It was Mo Yunqi. At this moment, Mo Yunqi was lying on the ground like a pile of mud, and his entire face was swollen like a pig's head. And Xianxia gazed at Yi Xian. Accompany me for a walk? Brother Yi grinned. All right. The two of them walked side by side towards the nearby Xiaodao. Mo Yunqi roared furiously from behind them. Just you wait. Just you wait. If I don't avenge her, then She's in Xianxia. Old man Ji had suddenly appeared by Mo Yunqi's side. Mo Yunqi's voice stopped abruptly, and then his head tilted to the side in the blink of an eye. Old man Ji kicked Mo Yunqi. Don't play dead. Get up and continue roaring. What's in Xianxia? Beat her until she cries. Mo Yunqi didn't move at all. Old man Ji didn't say anything else. He just pulled Mo Yunqi's leg up, and then he dragged Mo Yunqi up the mountain. On a certain Xiaodao, Yi Xian and Xianxia were walking side by side. Xianxia spoke in a light voice. I never expected that you would join Songlan Academy. Yi Xian fell silent. He also didn't expect that he would join Songlan Academy by a freak combination of factors. It could only be said that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. Xianxia suddenly stopped. I'm leaving the state of Jiang. I'm here to bid farewell today. Leave the state of Jiang. Yi Xian turned to look at Xianxia. Xianxia looked straight at Yi Xian. I'm worried about you. Yi Xian shook his head. I don't understand. Xianxia took a step forward. At this moment she was very close to Yi Xian. Yi Xian could already clearly smell the faint fragrance from Xianxia's body. Xianxia looked straight at Yi Xian. Everyone has underestimated you. I might even have underestimated you. I don't know what kind of fortuitous encounter you had, nor do I know what your true trump card is. However, you make me feel a trace of danger. Saying that, she shook her head and smiled. In the entire state of Jiang, there are very few people who can make me feel a sense of danger. Moreover, this kind of danger is not the kind of danger under normal circumstances. Yi Xian fell silent. Xianxia continued to walk forward while Yi Xian followed slowly. After a while, Xianxia said softly, After I leave, there might not be anyone in the state of Jiang who can truly suppress you in the future. Moreover, your character is too impulsive and straightforward. I'm afraid that one day the imperial capital will fall into chaos because of you. Saying that, she turned to look at Yi Xian. Promise me one thing. After I leave, if it's within your ability, take care of the state of Jiang. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. You might be thinking too highly of me. Xianxia smiled lightly. You still haven't answered me. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. I promise you that in the future, I will do my best to help the state of Jiang. Do you know what I like about you? Xianxia suddenly asked. Like me? Yi Xian was stunned and his mind went blank. Xianxia was also slightly stunned. She knew that she seemed to have misspoken. However, she didn't explain anything and only smiled before continuing to walk into the distance. Yi Xian was in a daze for a moment. Then he followed her slowly. For a time the two of them didn't speak and just walked like that. After a while, Xianxia stopped and took out a black jade pendant and handed it to Yi Xian. This is... Yi Xian was puzzled. Xianxia said softly, in the north of the state of Jiang, which is also the location of Two World City, the forces on the mountain discovered a ruin left behind by a sword master. They've almost developed it and they'll be able to enter it in a month at most. This is a certificate of qualification given to me by the higher-ups. With this jade pendant, I'm qualified to enter the ruin. To me, entering it doesn't have any special meaning. You're a swordsman, so it should be of great help to you. Moreover, that place is located in a volcanic area, and there might be something extremely hot underground. If you can obtain it, it should be of great help to your sister. However, you have to be careful. Besides the top 1 or 2 people from the state of Jiang, there will be some top geniuses from other countries going there as well. You can't underestimate them. Yi Xian pondered for a moment before he accepted the jade pendant. Xianxia smiled lightly. Farewell. She walked into the distance after she finished speaking. Will we meet again? Yi Xian suddenly asked. Xianxia stopped. My footsteps might be very fast. Yi Xian grinned. I'll surpass you. Xianxia turned to glance at Yi Xian and smiled. Good luck. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned and disappeared at the end of the Xiaodao. Yi Xian looked at the beautiful figure in the distance for a long time before he returned to his senses. He flipped his left palm and in it was the other jade pendant Xianxia gave him. 2 jade pendants. Looking at the 2 jade pendants, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. This smile was a little silly. Since he was young, he and his sister depended on each other for survival. There were very few people who treated him well. Even if there were people who treated him well, they were mostly using him. But Xianxia was different. Yi Xian would never forget someone who treated him well for the rest of his life. A moment later, Yi Xian tightly grasped the 2 jade pendants, turned around and walked up the mountain. He kept smiling, a silly smile. P.S. Friends who haven't collected this book, please add it to your bookshelf. Thank you very much to some friends who went to other book review sections to promote this book and pulled in many readers for this book. Thank you. Also thank you very much to the readers who have been tipping these 2 days. Touched. Thank you very much. Love you all. Chapter 41. Yi Xian didn't know what love was and he'd never loved in the past. All he knew was that he really liked being with Xianxia. As for anything else, he'd never thought about it. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped moving because an old man was standing not too far away from him. It was Elder Ling who'd followed Xianxia earlier. Yi Xian glanced at the old man but didn't say anything. Elder Ling sized up Yi Xian and then he said in a low voice, Old man Ling Xiu, one of the young Miss servants. Miss and asked Yi Xian. Elder Ling nodded. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Is something the matter, senior? Elder Ling said in a low voice, Young Master Yi, what I'm about to say might offend you in any way. I hope you can forgive me. Yi Xian nodded. Go ahead. Elder Ling said, Even though the young miss is from the state of Jiang, you should be able to tell that her background isn't simple. To put it bluntly, the people she meets in the state of Jiang might only be able to look up to her in the future, and they might not even have the qualifications to look up to her. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian nodded. You're trying to tell me not to get close to her, right? Elder Ling nodded. I presume young Master Yi is extraordinary since the young miss thinks so highly of him. However, the young miss isn't just an incomparably monstrous genius. The power behind her is something that young Master Yi can't even imagine. If young Master Yi has any other thoughts about the young miss, then forgive me for being blunt, but young Master Yi might live a very, very tiring life or even very, very miserable life, and the young miss might be implicated because of you. Yi Xian fell silent. Elder Ling glanced at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, please think about what I'm saying. Farewell. As soon as he finished speaking, the space in front of him suddenly split open, and in the next moment, Elder Ling entered the spatial rift and vanished. Splitting open space. Only those who had reached the Nether Passage realm were capable of such a feat. Above the Qi-resisting realm was the Ascending realm, and above the Ascending realm was the Nether Passage realm. The other party was several realms higher than him, and this Nether Passage realm expert was just a servant. The other party was purposely displaying his strength in front of him. His intentions were very clear. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian slowly walked up the mountain. Feeling pressured? The mysterious woman suddenly asked. Yi Xian nodded. The mysterious woman continued. The fire spirit within your younger sister can only last for a month at most. If you can't find a replacement in a month, then she'll be in great danger. Apart from that, the guy imprisoned on the second floor should be waking up soon. Once it awakens and you haven't found the Tao Law, you'll definitely die. If you die, your sister's fate might be even worse. Yi Xian took a deep breath. I want to cultivate. I want to become stronger. With that, he quickened his pace. Becoming stronger was for his sister, for himself, for survival, and for the sake of pursuing what he wanted to pursue. It was like how people in the secular world couldn't talk about love without money. How could they talk about living comfortably? Many relationships were built on the foundation of money. Even though it wasn't absolute, most relationships were like that. In next to no time, Yi Xian returned to the storm hall, and his expression instantly changed when he arrived before it. In the distance, Yi Ling sat on the ground and cried incessantly. Mo Yunqi, who had a bloody nose and swollen face, was by Yi Ling's side. At this moment, Mo Yunqi was gesturing to Yi Ling while Yi Ling cried even more fiercely. Yi Xian's expression instantly turned ferocious when he saw this. How dare you bully my sister? As soon as he finished speaking, a sword silently condensed in his palm. In the next moment, a powerful pressure accompanied by a faint glow of the sword swept out from his body, and the weeds in front of him were instantly slashed apart by this imposing aura and glow of the sword. One sword to decide life and death. Mo Yunqi was dumbfounded when he saw Yi Xian suddenly going berserk. He was about to speak, but Yi Xian had already rushed towards him with the sword in hand. Mo Yunqi was horrified when he sensed the power of Yi Xian's sword. He didn't dare to take it head-on, so he hurriedly leaped over the wall to escape. However, as soon as he leaped over the wall, it was directly turned into powder. Faster, thief! Mo Yunqi's face twitched when he saw the wall behind him turn into powder. He hurriedly sped up and ran into the distance. Behind him, Yi Xian madly chased after him. Everywhere Yi Xian passed, there was a mess. In the main hall, seeing Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi disappear not far away, Yi Ling was stunned, and then she hurriedly ran over. When she ran outside the wall, Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi had already disappeared into the distance. She could only vaguely hear Mo Yunqi's panicked voice. Big brother. I didn't bully your sister, calm down. However, Mo Yunqi's voice was soon drowned out by the sound of the sword. Yi Ling was stunned. What if Big Brother hurts himself? After saying that, she hurriedly ran to Old Man Ji's courtyard. In the courtyard, Old Man Ji was lying on a recliner with a wine gourd in his mouth, sleeping soundly. Yi Ling hugged Old Man Ji's arm and shook it vigorously, saying anxiously, Grandpa Ji, Big Brother is fighting with that guy. Quickly go and take a look. Old Man Ji did not move at all. He was drunk like a puddle of mud. Yi Ling had no choice but to run to Ji Anji's courtyard. Ji Anji glanced at Yi Ling, and Yi Ling's face was full of anxiety. Big sister Ji, Big Brother is fighting with that person. Do you want to persuade him? I'm afraid Big Brother will hurt himself. Ji Anji walked in front of Yi Ling. Do you know how to cook? Yi Ling nodded subconsciously. Ji Anji said, I'm hungry. Yi Ling. Behind the Kanglan Palace, other than a large number of abandoned buildings, there was a mountain range. At this moment, two figures were running wildly in a dense forest in this mountain range. The one in the lead was Mo Yunqi. Above his feet there were two whirlwinds. With the support of these two whirlwinds, his speed was like a gust of wind, extremely fast. And behind him there was Yi Xian holding the Ling Shao sword in his hand. At this moment, Yi Xian's body was filled with a ruthless aura. Everywhere he passed, the flowers, plants, and trees were basically cut down. After running for about an hour, Mo Yunqi chose to fight with Yi Xian head-on. However, when Yi Xian used one sword decides life and death, he decisively chose to escape. This was because his iron rod, before it could even get close to Yi Xian's sword, it was directly cut into pieces by Yi Xian's Ling Shao sword light. It was directly cut into pieces. He could not fight. Mo Yunqi ran madly into the depths of the forest, and behind him Yi Xian chased closely. Just like that, one person ran, the other chased from night to dawn. At dawn, Missouri Yunqi ran back to the front of the Kanglan Palace. As soon as he stopped, Yi Xian appeared behind him. Yi Xian was about to make a move, but Yi Ling, who had been waiting in front of the stone steps all night, hurriedly ran over and hugged Yi Xian. Brother, are you okay? He didn't hurt you, right? Not far away, Mo Yunqi, who was lying on the ground and gasping for breath, heard Yiling's words, and he was so angry that he almost breathed his last. At this moment, when he saw Yiling, Yi Xian also became slightly more normal. He gently rubbed Yiling's little head. Are you okay? Yiling hurriedly shook his head. I'm fine. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi, who was lying on the ground not far away. The latter's expression changed greatly and he was extremely vigilant. You don't mess around. I didn't bully your sister. You ask her yourself. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze and he looked at Yiling. What happened before? Yiling slightly lowered her head and did not speak. What happened? Yi Xian asked softly. Yiling softly said, I just remembered the time when I was with brother in the Yi family. At that time brother picked up a bun and he could not bear to eat it, so he gave it to me. Because of this, brother almost starved to death. As she spoke, tears began to flow down her cheeks. Yi Xian gently hugged Yiling. Silly girl, the past is the past. Brother will definitely not let you suffer in the future. Yiling hugged Yi Xian tightly. Brother can't suffer too much, okay? Yi Xian grinned. Okay, let's try our best to live a good life in the future, okay? Yiling raised her head, looked at Yi Xian and smiled through her tears. Okay. Soon Yiling fell asleep in Yi Xian's arms. Chapter 42. Soon, Mo Yunqi's wails could be heard from the mountain. Noon, inside the Azure Wave Palace. Old man Ji sat at the head of the table. He drank wine from time to time and was still drunk. On his left was Xianxia, who held a pair of chopsticks and slowly licked them. On old man Ji's right was the bald man. The bald man held a string of iron beads in his hand. The iron beads were very smooth and shone with a faint light. Obviously they were not made of ordinary materials. Below the bald man was Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi looked really miserable. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. There were many footprints on his body. And the bald man sitting not far from him looked at him from time to time with an unfriendly expression. At this moment, a fragrant smell wafted over. Old man Ji opened his eyes. Xianxia immediately sat up straight and held the long chopsticks in his hand ready to go. Yi Xian and Yiling each carried a plate over. Yi Xian carried a plate of roasted chicken. It was golden yellow and looked very tempting. Yiling carried a steamed fish. Looked very appetizing. The siblings had just placed the plate on the table when old man Ji and Xianxia started eating. The speed was so fast that it shocked the bald man and Mo Yunqi. Not to mention them, even Yi Xian and Yiling were stunned. Old man Ji was fine, but Xianxia's eating speed could be described as a bandit. In less than 10 breaths, the roasted chicken in front of Xianxia was only left with the bones and the fish was only left with the bones. The bald man and Mo Yunqi at the side were dumbfounded, and they had just picked up their chopsticks. Old man Ji glanced at Xianxia. Be more reserved. Xianxia licked his chopsticks and looked at Yi Xian. Is there more? Everyone. After a long time, the Azure Wave Palace quietened down. Everyone sat around the table. There were 7 or 8 plates on the table, all clean. The bald man and Mo Yunqi looked like they had nothing left to live for, because they had only eaten a few mouthfuls. Yi Xian and his sister Yiling looked at each other and smiled. They were already full when they were in the kitchen. At this time, old man Ji suddenly said, "Let me introduce you to the newcomer." As he spoke, he pointed at the bald man. Bai Zhe from Mount Mang in the north. He has a half-demon body. The bald man called Bai Zhe stood up and bowed slightly to the crowd. However, he cast an unfriendly glance at Mo Yunqi. The corners of Mo Yunqi's mouth twitched, and he glared fiercely at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Yi Xian was speechless. At this time, old man Ji pointed at Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi comes from Mo town at the border of the extreme south. He has a light and agile physique, and if he cultivates speed-type martial techniques, he will be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. He is good at using sticks and throwing knives. Fine daggers. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi. This guy was hiding something. Mo Yunqi suddenly pointed at Yi Xian. Old man, tell me about him. Old man Ji glanced at Yi Xian. Yi Xian from Qingqing's Yi family. He is a swordsman. Great swordsman. Great swordsman. Xianxia and the bald man glanced at Yi Xian, and there was a trace of surprise and curiosity in their eyes. Great swordsman. This was rare in the entire country of Jiang, especially for such a young great swordsman. Yi Xian. At this time, Mo Yunqi suddenly stood up. He looked at Yi Xian in shock. Big brother, you can't be that trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want, right? You're the trash. Yi Ling suddenly glared at Mo Yunqi. I won't cook for you in the future. At the side, Bai Zhe nodded. Don't let him eat. Mo Yunqi's face twitched. He gently fanned his cheeks and smiled. Little sister, I misspoke. Don't be angry. He finally understood. In this Zhonglan Academy, only this pair of siblings knew how to cook. If they didn't cook, he could only eat grass in the future. Yi Ling coldly snorted and didn't say anything. Old Man Ji suddenly said. He is the Yi Xian from the imperial capital. The Yi Xian from the imperial capital. Under Kuraki Academy's deliberate propaganda, Yi Xian's reputation in the imperial capital was very big. Of course, it wasn't a good reputation. Mo Yunqi sized up Yi Xian and shook his head. Tsuke Kuraki Academy is really awesome. They don't even want someone like you. Since when did Kuraki Academy have such high requirements? Yi Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Old Man Ji suddenly said. In the back mountain there is a martial arts hall. It used to be a place for Zhonglan Academy students to study. You can go there and have a look. Maybe you will gain something. Do you have martial arts? Mo Yunqi quickly asked. Cultivation methods are fine too. Old Man Ji shook his head. Why? Mo Yunqi was puzzled. Old Man Ji said calmly. I sold them for wine money. Everyone, Old Man Ji stood up. 1.5 years. There is still 1.5 years until the triennial deathmatch between Zhonglan Academy and Kuraki Academy. I don't want your corpses to be hung on Tsong Mountain's Shaodao in 1.5 years. Also, don't go out and wander around. If Kuraki Academy students see you, they will definitely beat you up. After saying that, he turned and left. Jianji suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. Go and make something to eat. Yi Xian. An hour later, after Yi Anji had eaten her fill, she stood up. Let me give you a friendly reminder. Kuraki Academy has 2 peerless geniuses, one male and one female. The male is called Fenju and the female is called Bei Chen. These 2 are not even 20 years old, but they have already reached the Ascendant Realm. They might even be half a step into the Ethereal Opening Realm. Let me put it this way. In the entire country of Jiang, there is only one person who can suppress them. You should know who this person is. The few people present naturally knew who this person was. Besides Enlanqiu, who else could it be? Jianji said again. Besides these 2, there are 3 other geniuses under them. The identities of these 3 people are unknown. We only know that each of them has a special ability. Rumor has it that if the 3 of them join forces, they can even fight against Enlanqiu. At this time, Mo Yunqi raised his right hand and said weakly, is it too late to quit now? Ji Anji glanced at Mo Yunqi. It's not too late to commit suicide now. Sigh. Mo Yunqi laid on the table and sighed deeply. I've been screwed over by this geezer. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, since everyone is here, I have something to discuss with all of you. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I looked it up earlier. Our academy lacks a lot of daily necessities. For example, we don't even have normal necessities. There are also some other things like toilet paper. In short, we lack everything. Oh my God. Mo Yunqi howled with grief while his head lay on the table, and he had a helpless expression on his face. Yi Xian glanced at them. I've decided to go down the mountain to buy some daily necessities. However, I don't have enough money. All of you should contribute some as well. Let's pool our resources together. Everyone was speechless. When he saw Ji Anji and the others remain silent, Yi Xian shrugged. It's fine if all of you don't contribute. We'll live our own lives from now on. That's fine, right? The corners of Mo Yunqi and the others' mouths twitched. Live our own lives? Eat grass in the future? A moment later, Bei Zhe took out a bag and handed it to Yi Xian. 20 gold coins. Yi Xian didn't stand on ceremony and kept it. Then he looked at Jianji. The latter just stared at Yi Xian, causing Yi Xian's scalp to go numb. A moment later, Yi Xian waved his hand. All right. You don't need to contribute anymore. Go do what you need to do. Ji Anji turned around and left without any hesitation. Yi Xian turned to look at Mo Yunqi. Just like Ji Anji, Mo Yunqi also looked at him. Just like that. Yi Xian suddenly slammed the table and shouted angrily, "What are you looking at? Hurry up and pay up. Otherwise eat grass." Mo Yunqi was speechless. An hour later, Yi Xian brought his sister down the mountain. To their left and right were Mo Yunqi and Beizai. They had bought quite a lot of things this time. He and his sister Yiling definitely couldn't bring so many things, so he dragged Mo Yunqi and Beizai along. Along the way, Yiling was lively and very happy. Looking at Yiling, Yi Xian's eyes were slightly worried, because the fire spirit had temporarily suppressed the coldness in Yiling's body. The fire spirit could last for 2 or 3 months at most. If there was no new replacement after 2 or 3 months. Thinking up to there, he took out the black jade pendant and Lanqiu had given him. The Two World Mountains, the Sword Master's dwelling. "I have to go myself," Yi Xian said softly. On Yi Xian's left, Mo Yunqi had a weed in his mouth and was humming an unknown tune. He seemed rather sloppy. On Yi Xian's right, Beizai walked with his head lowered. He was very silent, or rather he basically didn't speak at all. At this moment, Mo Yunqi suddenly said, "Speaking of which, are the two of you confident in a year and a half?" Yi Xian patted Mo Yunqi's shoulder gently. "What's there to be afraid of? Just do it." Mo Yunqi gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. "Big brother, you make it sound so easy. The problem is, can we win? If we can't, we'll be killed and our corpses will be hung on Tsang Mountain's Shaodao." Yi Xian spread his hands. "You don't want to do it? Then what should we do? Kneel and beg for mercy at Kuraki Academy?" Mo Yunqi sighed softly. "It's all my fault for being blinded by greed and believing old man Ji's words. I was tricked here by him. Sigh, it's all tears." At this point he seemed to have thought of something and he turned to look at Beizai. "Big guy, how did you get tricked here?" Yi Xian also looked at Beizai. He really wanted to know how Beizai got tricked here. Under normal circumstances, no one would be willing to come here. Beizai hesitated for a moment and then he said, "Old man Ji said that my bones are amazing, that I'm naturally intelligent, and that I'm a 1 in a million martial arts prodigy. He said that the peace of the state of Jiang will depend on me in the future." Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi were stunned on the spot. After a moment, Mo Yunqi gulped and then he said, "You believe him?" Beizai glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. "I believe him." Yi Xian. Chapter 43. Hearing Beizai's words, Yi Xian shook his head. In this world there were actually such naive people. Mo Yunqi, on the other hand, looked at Beizai with pity and shook his head. At this moment, Beizai suddenly asked, "Am I not a martial arts prodigy?" Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi looked at each other, and the two of them walked away quickly. Behind them, Beizai touched his bald head and was a little confused. Soon Yi Xian and the others entered the bustling streets of the imperial capital. Because he had the VIP card of the Drunken Immortal restaurant, Yi Xian went straight to the Drunken Immortal restaurant. If he did not take advantage of the situation, he would be a bastard. Soon the three of them arrived at the busiest area in the center of the city. There was a tall building here with a total of 9 floors. It was extremely luxurious. This building was the famous Drunken Immortal restaurant in Qingzhou. Yi Xian walked in with the 2 coolies, Yiling and Mo Yunqi. Soon, a delicate and pretty woman came to greet them. The delicate and pretty woman bowed slightly to them. "Is there anything you need?" Yi Xian took out his VIP card. When she saw the VIP card, the delicate and pretty woman's face suddenly changed. She bowed deeply again. "Distinguished guest, please follow me." Soon, under the lead of the delicate and pretty woman, the 4 of them arrived at a very luxurious private room. As soon as they sat down, someone immediately served good spiritual tea. Before long, an old man walked in. After the old man entered, he bowed slightly to Yi Xian and the others. Finally, he looked at Yi Xian. "How should I address you, distinguished guest?" Yi Xian said, "Yi Xian." Yi Xian. The old man was slightly struck dumb when he had heard that. He sized Yi Xian up and down. He was sure the person in front of him should be Yi Xian, whose name had spread like wildfire in the imperial city. The old man's expression was natural. "What instructions does young Master Yi have?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, "Give me 300 caddies of rice, 50 chickens, 50 ducks, 10 pigs, 10 cows, and 5 barrels of oil." Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. The old man in front of Yi Xian was also dumbfounded. Mo Yunqi, who was not far away, sat in the corner and looked at the ceiling as if he didn't know Yi Xian. Bei Zai's expression was also extremely unnatural. Coming to a place like the Drunken Immortal Restaurant to buy these? Who had ever seen anyone come to the Drunken Immortal Restaurant to buy rice and oil? After a while, Yi Xian finally finished speaking. However, as if he thought of something, he added, "Discount, remember to give me a discount. 50% off." The old man, seeing the old man's expression, Yi Xian frowned. "What, you're not selling?" The old man smiled bitterly. "Young Master Yi, it's not that we don't want to sell, but we don't have these," Yi Xian said indifferently. "The person who gave me the card said that if I need anything in the future I can come to the Drunken Immortal Restaurant. As long as my request is not too excessive, the Drunken Immortal Restaurant can satisfy it." Alas, it seems that he was bragging to me. Hearing this, the old man's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "Young Master Yi, please wait a moment. Although we don't have these items in the Drunken Immortal Restaurant, there are many of them outside. This old man will immediately prepare them for young Master Yi. Please wait a moment, young Master Yi." Yi Xian nodded. "Then I'll have to trouble you." The old man bowed, then turned around and left. In the room, only Yi Xian's group of 4 were left. At this moment, Mo Yunqi suddenly said, "This is a purple card. Among the many VIP cards in the Drunken Immortal Restaurant, it's only inferior to the black card. You're not simple." Yi Xian smiled and said, "It's just a card." Mo Yunqi shook his head. "Big brother, a place like the Drunken Immortal Restaurant can be said to be the most luxurious and honorable place in the imperial capital. You came to this place to buy meat, rice, oil and salt. You're really shameless." Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi lightly. "If we don't come to this place and go outside, do we have enough money? Is it not enough for you?" Mo Yunqi didn't say anything. Soon the old man walked in. The old man bowed slightly to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, we've already prepared the things you need. They've been packed in 2 carriages. We've also arranged for servants to escort you all the way. Young Master Yi, do you need anything else?" Yi Xian cupped his fists. "Thank you very much. And how many gold coins in total?" The old man smiled. "Just treat it as a free gift." "A free gift?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He took out a bag and placed it on the table in front of him. "There are 36 gold coins in here. I think it should be enough. Goodbye." After saying that, he pulled Yi Ling and walked out of the door. Bei Zai and Mo Yunqi hurriedly followed. In the private room, the old man smiled bitterly. He originally wanted Yi Xian to owe him a small favor. But obviously Yi Xian didn't want to owe the Drunken Immortal Restaurant a small favor. After keeping the bag of money, the old man followed them out. In front of the entrance of the Drunken Immortal Restaurant, 2 carriages were already waiting. The carriages were loaded to the brim. Behind the carriages there were 3 huge iron cages. In the iron cages there were some livestock. Fortunately, the Drunken Immortal Restaurant had arranged manpower. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be able to bring these things away. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yunqi and Bei Zai. "Let's go." The 2 of them jumped onto the carriage. Yi Xian also jumped onto one of the carriages with Yi Ling. Just like that, the group of people left in a grandiose manner. Behind Yi Xian and the others, the old man looked at the bag of money in his hand and shook his head. Along the way, Yi Xian and the others naturally attracted the attention of others. Because they brought too many things, Yi Xian had no choice. Songlan Academy was very far from the imperial city. It was impossible for him to come here every day. That was too much of a waste of time. At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "That's Yi Xian." Yi Xian. Along with this exclamation, the gazes of countless people in the surroundings all turned to look at him. Seeing the surrounding gazes, Yi Xian was a little stunned. Was he that famous? "It's really Yi Xian." Someone said, "He's the trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want." See, this Songlan Academy really doesn't care about face. They actually want the trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want. No wonder they were suppressed by Kuraki Academy. But I heard that Nguesher seems to think highly of him. Even Nguesher can make a mistake. Look at him, he's only at the Qi transformation realm. He hasn't even reached the Qi controlling realm. This kind of trash doesn't even have the qualifications to be an errand boy in Kuraki Academy. In the field, everyone was talking about Yi Xian without the slightest scruple. Yi Xian was expressionless. Society was like this. Many people liked to step on others to show their superiority. Don't talk about my brother. At this moment Yiling suddenly glared at the people around her. My brother didn't offend any of you. What right do you have to talk about him? Below, a young man laughed. I want to talk about your brother. Your brother is trash. A trash that Kuraki Academy doesn't want. How about it? Bite me. Yiling was so angry that her face turned red. She angrily pointed at the young man. Brother, hit him. On the carriage Xian flashed down. The next moment the young man who spoke before was directly sent flying. This time he flew for a full 5 or 6 feet until he hit a wall. The young man lay on the ground and kept wailing. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His ribs were all broken. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they witnessed this scene. This Xian publicly hit someone? On the other side, Mo Yunqi watched and shook his head. He finally understood that one could offend this Xian but never, ever offend his sister. Otherwise he would make one regret being born into this world. He actually hit someone in the street. He's too arrogant. Does he still have any respect for the law? Everyone pointed at Xian but no one dared to make a move. Xian glanced at the people around him and suddenly roared, "Shut up." The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Xian glanced at the people one by one. Cut the crap. If you don't like me, Xian, then come and hit me. Come on. I'll do it. At this moment, a young man suddenly rushed out from the crowd. However, as soon as he rushed in front of Xian, he was directly sent flying by Xian's fist. Similarly, after the young man smashed to the ground, he was unable to get up again. Xian glanced at the surroundings. Anyone else? The surroundings were silent. Many people were always like this, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Since when did Songlan Academy's dogs dare to be so arrogant in the imperial city? At this moment, suddenly a voice came from the side. Soon 3 men wearing ink-white robes walked over from afar. It's the students of Kuraki Academy. Someone in the crowd exclaimed. Soon the surroundings were boiling. The silent people in the surroundings started to chatter again. Obviously, the appearance of the students of Kuraki Academy gave them great courage. Mo Yunqi's eyes slightly narrowed when he saw the students of Kuraki Academy, and Beizei's expression also turned cold. The two of them jumped off the carriage at the same time and then came to Xian's side. Kuraki Academy and Songlan Academy, these two academies could be said to be true enemies. The enmity between the two academies was innate. In the past, as long as the students of the two academies met, nothing good would happen. However, as Songlan Academy declined towards the end, Songlan Academy students would basically avoid Kuraki Academy's students. The 3 Kuraki Academy students walked in front of Xian's group, and the leading Kuraki Academy student sized up Xian and ridiculed. So you're the trash that my Kuraki Academy doesn't want? Chi Transformation Realm? Songlan Academy is really declining. Even trash like you. At this moment Xian suddenly flew up and kicked the chest of the man who spoke. Bang! Under the gaze of the crowd, the man's entire body was sent flying, and in the air the man spat out blood. Everyone was stunned. Mo Yunqi and Beizei were also stunned, because they didn't expect Xian to attack. The surroundings were completely silent. When Xian sent the man flying, he quickly whipped out 2 legs from his left and right, and the remaining 2 Kuraki Academy students were caught off guard and were directly kicked away. Xian didn't stop. He rushed in front of the 3 people and then picked up the money bags from their waists. Then he quickly returned to Mo Yunqi and Beizei's side. Run. Run. Mo Yunqi and Beizei, who were preparing to go all out, were instantly stunned. They thought they had heard wrong. Meanwhile, Xian had already carried Yiling back to the carriage and then drove away. Beat up people, snatch the things and run. Everyone. P.S. Created a reader group, 677540563. Everyone can come in and brag. Chapter 44. Beizei and Mo Yunqi weren't the only ones who were stunned. Running away after beating someone up? Beizei and Mo Yunqi quickly came back to their senses, and the 2 of them hurriedly followed. Everyone in the surroundings gazed at the 3 students from Kuraki Academy. At this moment, the expressions of the 3 students were incomparably ferocious. For so many years, when had Kuraki Academy ever suffered such a setback? Not only were they beaten up, but they were also robbed by someone from Zhou Academy. It was a great humiliation. The leading student suddenly roared, "Chase after them." After speaking, he directly rushed over. The other two students also followed closely behind. For the three of them, what happened just now was undoubtedly a great humiliation. If they didn't get rid of this humiliation, they would undoubtedly become the laughingstock of the entire Kuraki Academy. Not only that, they would also tarnish the reputation of Kuraki Academy. For so many years, only Kuraki Academy bullied Zhou Academy. When had Kuraki Academy ever been bullied by Zhou Academy? Humiliation could only be washed away with blood. The eyes of the three students were filled with cold killing intent. Xian and the others were carrying a lot of things, so their speed was naturally slow. After a while, the three students from Kuraki Academy caught up with Xian and the others. Xian stopped and jumped off the carriage. He turned around and looked straight at the three students from Kuraki Academy. Soon the three of them were getting closer and closer to Xian. The leading young man said ferociously, "You bastard, you actually dare." Before he finished speaking, Xian suddenly disappeared from his spot. When he reappeared, he was already in front of him. At the same time, Xian swept his leg at him. The sweep of his leg tore through the air. The young man's expression changed greatly. In a hurry, he could only hurriedly use his left hand to block it. Bang! Crack! Along with a muffled sound and the sound of bones breaking, the young man's entire body was directly smashed into the wall several meters away. Bang! The wall shook violently and immediately collapsed. Fortunately, the young man's reaction was extremely fast. He rolled backwards and was not buried by the wall. However, as soon as he stopped, a foot stepped on his abdomen. Xian stared coldly at the young man beneath his feet. The young man's eyes were filled with malevolence and madness. "Kill me if you have the ability. Otherwise, I'll kill your entire family." At this moment, Xian suddenly stepped on the young man's throat. Crack! The young man's voice stopped abruptly as fresh blood flowed ceaselessly from the corner of his mouth. At the moment he breathed his last, his eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief. When they saw Xian kill, the other two students of Kuraki Academy were finally slightly panicked. The reason why they dared to chase after Xian's group without the slightest scruple was because they had the confidence. In their hearts, the students of Zhou Academy wouldn't dare to kill them no matter what. However, reality told them that they were wrong. The two of them had already started to slowly retreat. Right now they no longer cared about shame. They only wanted to live. On the other side, Mo Yunqi and Bei Zai's expressions were slightly solemn. If it was said to be a small fight earlier, then it wasn't a small fight now. They were in big trouble. Nearby, after Xian killed the young man, he turned around and leaped onto his horse. "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he held tightly onto Yiling's hand and clamped the carriage between his legs as it moved towards the distance. Bei Zai and Mo Yunqi hurriedly followed after him. After around 10 minutes, a group of men in ink-white robes arrived where Xian's group was earlier. When they saw the young man's corpse on the ground not too far away, their expressions instantly became ferocious. The leader of this group was a man who held a black spear. The man had slanted brows, starry eyes, and a slender figure. He could be said to be a handsome man. This man was one of the three great geniuses of Kuraki Academy's outer court, Zhou Li. Senior Zhou Li. A nearby student of Kuraki Academy spoke in a ferocious voice. "These students of Zhou Academy are really audacious. They actually dared to kill a student of our Kuraki Academy in broad daylight. Senior Zhou Li, I request for permission to fight to the death. I'm willing to take my own life before the academy if I don't annihilate all the students of Zhou Academy." As soon as he finished speaking, he intended to charge out, but he was stopped by a spear. All the students looked at Zhou Li in succession. Zhou Li glanced at the end of the street. "A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Today I'll annihilate Zhou Academy." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out. Moreover, there were over 20 students of Kuraki Academy behind him. At a certain place in the wilderness, Xian's group was dashing madly on the carriage. On the way, Mo Yunqi glanced at Xian. "Weren't you a bit too impulsive earlier?" Xian said indifferently, "I gave him a chance to live." Mo Yunqi fell silent. Xian continued, If we don't kill him, he will pursue us relentlessly. Moreover, if we give him a chance, he won't show us any mercy, right? Bai Zhe suddenly nodded. Yes, he deserves to be killed. Mo Yunqi smiled bitterly. He deserves to be killed, but what should we do after killing him? Kuraki Academy will definitely not let this matter rest. Yi Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi. I'll fight the young one and old man Ji will fight the old one. What if we can't win? Mo Yunqi asked. Yi Xian shrugged his shoulders. If we can't win, then we can't win. What else can we do? Mo Yunqi still wanted to say something, but Bai Zhe, who was beside him, suddenly said, Can you stop talking nonsense? Mo Yunqi was speechless. At this moment, the three of them suddenly turned around. Behind them, a group of people was chasing after them. Students of Kuraki Academy. Seeing those people, Yi Xian's expression was indifferent. He retracted his gaze and looked at Mo Yunqi, who was not far away. Do me a favor, bring my sister back to Zhonglong Academy. Yi Ling wanted to say something, but after being glared at by Yi Xian, he obediently remained silent. Mo Yunqi glanced behind him and then he grabbed Yi Ling. In the next moment, two whirlwinds appeared under his feet, and in the blink of an eye, he and Yi Ling were already several tens of feet away. Yi Xian looked at Bai Zhe, who was beside him. You should leave too. Bai Zhe shook his head. Yi Xian smiled. This matter was caused by me. Bai Zhe shook his head again. They targeted Zhonglong Academy. Without you, they would still target me and Emoshirao. Yi Xian smiled and did not say anything. He jumped off the carriage and walked towards the group of Kuraki Academy students. Beside him was Bai Zhe. Seeing the group of Zhonglong Academy students rushing over, Yi Xian's expression gradually turned sinister. Fighting was the thing that Yi Xian was least afraid of in this lifetime. His realm and strength weren't obtained through cultivation but through fighting. Especially when he had just become the young master of the Yi clan, he practically had to fight to the death with the members of the other clans on the streets every single day. To him, fighting had become a common occurrence. Zhou Li suddenly raised his spear. Behind him, the group of people stopped and Zhou Li said coldly, I alone am enough. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly stomped his right foot. Bang! The ground instantly collapsed. At the same time, a stream of air suddenly rose beneath his feet, and in the blink of an eye, Zhou Li charged towards Yi Xian and Bai Zhe like a bolt of lightning. Key controlling realm. Yi Xian suddenly stopped, and at the instant he stopped, Zhou Li's spear had already arrived before him. His body suddenly leaned backwards like a piece of paper and he directly dodged the spear. At the same time, his right foot suddenly kicked upwards. Bang! The spear in Zhou Li's hand trembled violently, and he was pushed over 3 back. As soon as he stopped, Yi Xian pounced towards him like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. Zhou Li's eyes narrowed slightly, and he suddenly swept the spear in his hand. Total annihilation. Hiss! This sweep directly tore the air apart and an explosion suddenly resounded. A wisp of a savage smile arose on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth. He didn't dodge but instead clenched his right hand tightly into a fist, and then he blasted it forward. Fist crush. Under the enhancement of battle intent, this low-level martial technique had completely surpassed the might of a low-level martial technique. The fist and spear collided. Bang! Along with the sound of an explosion, Zhou Li's entire body was pushed back over 10 along with his spear. In the process of his retreat, his feet had forcefully carved out 2 deep trenches on the ground. As soon as Zhou Li stopped, Yi Xian had charged in front of him once more. At the same time, Yi Xian blasted another fist towards him. It was the same fist crush. There was no technique at all. It was just a simple punch that was direct and violent. It was direct and forceful. Zhou Li's pupils constricted when he sensed the strength within Yi Xian's fist. He didn't dare act carelessly, and the energy within his body surged madly into the spear in his hand before he stabbed it forward. The spear and sword flickered with a cold light as they stabbed forward. At the same time, a sharp and ear-piercing sound of something being torn apart resounded. It was the sound of the spear tearing through the air. Under the gazes of everyone, the fist and spear collided in the most violent manner possible. Bang! As soon as they collided, both Yi Xian and Zhou Li retreated explosively at the same time. But in next to no time, Yi Xian stopped while Zhou Li was still retreating explosively. At the same time, Yi Xian charged towards Zhou Li once more. This time, Zhou Li didn't have the time to deal with it. Yi Xian's fist smashed onto Zhou Li's chest. Boo! A mouthful of blood essence sprayed out from Zhou Li's mouth, and then his figure arched as he flew backwards. Right when Yi Xian was about to attack again, the group of students from Kuraki Academy behind Zhou Li suddenly charged towards Yi Xian. A ferocious glow instantly appeared in Bai Zai's eyes when he witnessed this scene, and in the next moment he charged towards that group of people. At the instant he charged over, every single step he took left a deep footprint on the ground. On the other hand, Yi Xian didn't waste his breath at all, and he charged directly towards that group of people. He wasn't afraid of a one-on-one battle, and he wasn't afraid of a group battle either. Wait for me. Right at this moment, a voice resounded from behind Yi Xian and Bai Zai. It was Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi was like a gust of wind as he attacked from afar. He was extremely swift, and he arrived by Yi Xian and Bai Zai's side in the blink of an eye. Mo Yunqi gazed at the 20+ people that were charging over from afar, and he laughed savagely as he said, "Can they kill us?" Yi Xian said indifferently, "Do you think they will kill us?" Mo Yunqi laughed heartily and said, "I actually asked such a stupid question. Kill them. Let them know that from today onwards, our Zhonglan Academy isn't so easily bullied." As his voice fell, he suddenly clasped his hands together, and the moment he separated them, 2 cold lights flashed out from his palms. Flying dagger. In the distance, the heads of 2 students from Kuraki Academy directly flew out. But in the next moment, Mo Yunqi was directly sent flying by a student from Kuraki Academy, but in the next instant, that student's head was instantly blasted apart by Yi Xian's punch. But very quickly, another student from Kuraki Academy directly collided with Yi Xian's body. Chapter 45. A group fight. The battlefield was a mess. Even though Yi Xian's group of 3 were formidable, Kuraki Academy had the advantage in numbers. So when the battle started, Yi Xian's group of 3 didn't gain much of an advantage. After all, any student that was able to join Kuraki Academy wasn't trash. However, Kuraki Academy didn't gain much of an advantage, and it should be said that they were in a very miserable state. Because up until now, 6 or 7 students from Kuraki Academy had died miserably. Bang! After Yi Xian blasted a student flying with a single punch, he was just about to follow up with another attack when a spear tore through the sky towards him. It was Zhou Li. Yi Xian stopped moving. He didn't dodge, and he allowed Zhou Li's spear to stab into his chest. Bang! Yi Xian retreated by over 3 m. However, Zhou Li's expression changed violently because Yi Xian had used his body to forcefully block his spear. This was something he hadn't expected, and since he hadn't expected this, then the consequences would naturally be severe. Sure enough, Yi Xian suddenly grabbed Zhou Li's spear, and in the next moment he pressed forward along the spear and suddenly struck his knee against Zhou Li's stomach. Bang! Zhou Li's entire body was instantly blasted, flying by over 10 m. Bang! Zhou Li crashed to the ground while blood sprayed from his mouth, and the internal organs in his stomach had been shattered by Yi Xian's knee strike. Yi Xian walked over to Zhou Li, and then Zhou Li raised his head to look at Yi Xian with an extremely savage expression. "I underestimated you. But after we die today, the Academy won't underestimate you anymore." As he spoke, he suddenly roared furiously towards the surroundings. "Let's go." At this moment, all the students from Kuraki Academy in the surroundings stopped, and they intended to charge at Yi Xian when they saw Zhou Li's appearance. Yi Xian coldly looked at those people and they immediately stopped. It wasn't that they were afraid of Yi Xian, but they were afraid that Yi Xian would kill Zhou Li. Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi walked to the left and right of Yi Xian. Both of them had different degrees of injuries, especially Mo Yunqi. Blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth, and there were many cracks on Bai Zai's upper body. The weakest of these students from Kuraki Academy were at least in the Qi-controlling realm. Moreover, they were not ordinary Qi-controlling realm cultivators. The fact that the 3 of them were able to survive after fighting against 20 of them was already extremely terrifying. In front of Yi Xian, Zhou Li slowly stood up, and once again roared at the students of Kuraki Academy, "Run!" He was no fool. After a round of battle, he already knew that he and the others had severely underestimated the strength of the 3 people in front of him. If they continued fighting, they would all be sacrificed in vain. In the surroundings, not a single one of the Kuraki Academy students tried to escape. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly turned and walked away. Bai Zhe and Mo Yunqi glanced at Zhou Li, whose internal organs had been severely injured by Yi Xian, and then turned and left as well. At this moment Zhou Li suddenly laughed sinisterly. What? Are you going to humiliate me? I, a student of Kuraki Academy, would rather die than be humiliated by a student of Zhonglan Academy. As soon as he finished speaking under everyone's gaze, Zhou Li's right hand clenched into a fist, and then he suddenly punched his throat. Crack! His bones shattered and Zhou Li's body stiffened on the spot. Senior Zhou Li. In the surroundings, all the students of Kuraki Academy rushed to Zhou Li's corpse, and their tears flowed down. Not far away beside Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Damn it, it's as though the three of us are the bad guys. Who the hell is the bully here? Bai Zhe rubbed his upper body and soon the cracks on his body began to gradually recover. He glanced at Yi Xian who was beside him. Your fleshly body is formidable. During the battle earlier he noticed that Yi Xian's fleshly body wasn't inferior to his at all. Yi Xian said in a light voice, You're formidable as well. This wasn't a compliment. Up until now, amongst the younger generation only Bai Zhe was comparable to him in terms of fleshly body. Right at this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian's group of three. The middle-aged man wore a golden silk robe, and on the left side of his chest, there was the symbol of Kuraki Academy. Yi Xian recognized this person. It was Li Xiu, the vice dean of Kuraki Academy. Things have gotten out of hand. But it was normal, someone had already died, so things had definitely gotten out of hand. Li Xiu stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You want to leave after killing someone? Yi Xian laughed with ridicule. Kill someone? What? Only your Kuraki Academy students are allowed to kill someone, but my Zhonglan Academy students are not allowed to? Or are you saying that Kuraki Academy has no more students, and you want the dignified vice dean to come out and take revenge? Li Xiu sneered, goading me? Don't worry, I won't bully you. As he spoke he turned to look at a rock in the distance and there an old man was lying on it. This person was none other than Old Man Ji. The corner of Li Xiu's mouth gradually turned malevolent. Old Man Ji, from this moment onwards I declare war on Zhonglan Academy. War. Right at this moment Old Man Ji suddenly stood up, and in the next moment under everyone's gaze he plucked a weed beside him and casually threw it away. Li Xiu's expression changed greatly, and he suddenly clasped his hands together. In an instant, a formless aura appeared around him and at the same time, a powerful force surged out from his hands like a tidal wave. Yi Xian and the other two were directly blasted away by this force. At this moment, under the astonished gazes of Yi Xian and the other two, the weed was like a sharp sword, directly piercing through the force released by Li Xiu, and even the aura released by Li Xiu instantly vanished without a trace. Li Xiu's right arm was directly sent flying. The surroundings fell silent. Witnessing this scene Yi Xian and the other two were dumbstruck. Mo Yunqi gulped. This old man is so amazing. Next time when we speak to him should we be more respectful? Yi Xian was also slightly shocked. This old man's strength was truly terrifying. He was probably slightly stronger than the third master of the Drunken Immortal Inn. In the distance Old Man Ji glanced at Li Xiu. War? Are you sure? Li Xiu stared fixedly at Old Man Ji, and his expression was extremely unsightly. Old Man Ji drank a mouthful of wine and shook his head. Do you know why Zhonglan Academy still hasn't collapsed? As he spoke he pointed at himself. Because of me, as long as I don't die, Zhonglan Academy will not close its doors. If you want to start a war, fine, I'll let you kill these three little fellows. But this old man guarantees your Kuraki Academy that your Kuraki Academy students below the age of 30 will not live to see tomorrow's sun. If you don't believe me then feel free to come. Anyway, these three fellows here are picked up, I don't care. Hearing this, Yi Xian and the other two almost went berserk. Picked up? Mother****. Mo Yunqi glared at Old Man Ji. Beat him up? Yi Xian looked at Mo Yunqi. You go first. Go your ass. Mo Yunqi glared at Yi Xian. You want to sell me out again? Yi Xian said seriously. Big brother, next time when you want to beat someone up, can you have some idea? Can't you fight when you can't win? Don't ***king fight when you can't win. This isn't beating people up. This is asking for a beating. Mo Yunqi. At this moment old man Ji suddenly looked at Yi Xian and the other two. What are you still mumbling about? Let's go. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zai were about to leave, but at this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, wait. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Under everyone's gaze Yi Xian walked to the corpses of the Kuraki Academy students. One by one he collected the money pouch and weapons from the waist of the corpses, but he didn't collect Suoli's. Seeing Yi Xian's actions, everyone was stunned. Old man Ji directly lied down pretending to be dead. Not far away, Mo Yunqi hurriedly walked to Yi Xian's side. He pulled on Yi Xian's sleeve. Big brother, can't you have some face? There are so many people watching. Yi Xian glared at him. Face? Do you want to eat or eat grass? Mo Yunqi didn't say anything. He obediently returned to Bai Zai's side. Mo Yunqi covered his face with both hands, shaking his head. Shameful. Just like this, under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian collected 8 to 9 money pouches and 5 to 6 weapons. He glanced at those weapons. They weren't ordinary, they could be sold for a good price. Yi Xian nodded in satisfaction, then looked at Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi not far away. What are you waiting for? Come over and help set up the carriage. The two of them didn't move. Yi Xian said calmly, you can eat grass tonight. Mo Yunqi hurriedly ran over, then jumped onto one of the carriages. Bai Zai hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked over. Just like this, under the gaze of the Kuraki Academy students, Yi Xian and the other two slowly set up the carriage, heading into the distance. Old man Ji didn't leave, instead lying on the rocks as if he had fallen asleep. Li Xiu stared at old man Ji. Today isn't the end, it's the beginning. After saying that, he turned around and left with the group of Kuraki Academy students. On the rocks, old man Ji still had his eyes closed, snoring. What happened between Kuraki Academy and Songlon Academy, like a plague, instantly spread throughout the imperial capital. The entire imperial capital was shocked. Songlon Academy students killed Kuraki Academy students. How many years has it been since something like this happened? Could it be that Songlon Academy was going to rise? For a moment, the entire imperial capital was in a heated discussion. Country of Zhang's imperial palace, Yangxin Palace. A middle-aged man dressed in a luxurious robe looked at the secret report in his hand. Looking at it, the middle-aged man suddenly chuckled. The middle-aged man got up and walked to the entrance of the hall. Looking up at the horizon, Little Nine's secret report says that the youth who dared to face thousands of Tang's black-armored cavalrymen alone in Two World City has come to the imperial capital. He's that Yi Xian who's the talk of the town now. In a corner of the hall, a woman's voice suddenly sounded. I've already looked up his information. He's from Qingqing, grew up with his younger sister when his parents weren't around, and devoted himself to the Yi family, but was abandoned by the Yi family in the end. In order to treat his younger sister's illness, he brought her to the imperial capital. The middle-aged man glanced at the corner and smiled. This should be what's on the surface. In the corner, a wheelchair slowly slid out, and in the wheelchair sat a woman in a black dress. She looked very young and very beautiful, but her hair was snow white. Apart from that, her eyes were closed, and they had been closed all this time. The woman in the black dress said softly, and Guosher treated him differently, and he came out unscathed after killing an elder of the drunken immortal abode on the cloud ship. There's no way to find out the details. The middle-aged man said with a smile. It's not easy to survive after killing an elder of the drunken immortal abode. With that, he walked back to the desk and took out a golden round plate. Then he took out a golden brush and wrote the word Yi on the front of the round plate. And behind the round plate there were 2 words, Guosher. The middle-aged man suddenly turned to look at the woman. You don't object? The woman asked, why should I object? There's no harm in it. The middle-aged man laughed and said, nowadays many young people only care about their own little plans, especially those from aristocratic families and academies. In their hearts there's only their families and academies. Country. They don't have a country in their hearts. At that time, that youth dared to stand up against the Tang army without any interest or purpose. Just based on this, he deserves the title of Guosher. With that, he turned to look at the woman in the black dress. I'll have to trouble Nation Master Lu to go to Kanglin Academy for me. Chapter 46. Songlon Academy, Songlon Hall. Inside the hall, everyone sat around the table. Xian and his sister would occasionally bring a dish to the table. None of the dishes were particularly exquisite, but they smelled especially fragrant and appetizing. At the side, Xianxia licked his chopsticks. He wanted to eat a few times but was stopped by Old Man Ji, by Zai and Mo Yunqi. If this woman were to eat now, they wouldn't even have a bone to chew on. After a while, all the dishes were finally served. 12 dishes. There were meat and vegetables. Yiling obediently scooped a bowl of rice for everyone, then sat beside Xian. Old Man Ji took a sip of wine. I was too impulsive today. Everyone was silent. Xian thought for a moment. They want to bully us. Old Man Ji said, we can endure it for a while. Xian asked, will they let us go if we endure it? He shook his head. No, the more we endure, the more they will be annoyed. When I was in Qingqing, I met some people. They are very fierce and fierce. The weaker you are, the more they will bully you. Only by fighting with them and hurting them will they respect you and not dare to bully you easily. Old Man Ji was silent. Mo Yunqi was silent. Xianxia only cared about eating. At this moment, Bai Zai suddenly said, he's right. When I was in Mount Mang, I often fought with demonic beast. When you meet a demonic beast, you must not run. The more you run, the more ferocious it will be and the more likely it will attack you. You can only fight with it until it is afraid. The next time it sees you, it will not dare to bully you easily and will even retreat. As he said that, he raised the wine glass beside his bowl and pointed it at Xian. Well done. Xian also raised his wine glass. He glanced at Mo Yunqi, who thought for a moment and also raised his wine glass. The three of them looked at each other and drank it in one gulp. They did not know each other before, but now they had a common identity. They were students of Songlon Academy. Old Man Ji did not say anything else and started eating. The surrounding people were like the reincarnation of hungry ghosts. In less than a quarter of an hour, all the food on the table had been swept clean. After eating, Old Man Ji gulped down a mouthful of wine and said, come to the back mountain at midnight tonight. With that he turned around and left. Xianxia put down her chopsticks and glanced at Xian. Can you make more? The corner of Xian's mouth twitched. He pointed to the side and said, I left some for you in the pantry. Xianxia nodded. Thank you. After saying that, she picked up her chopsticks and turned to leave. Yiling cleverly put away the bowls and chopsticks on the table, while Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi ran away after eating. Washing dishes and whatnot was killing them. Seeing the two of them running away, Yiling covered her mouth and chuckled. Xian was a little helpless. He helped clean up and said, let's go, I'll help you wash up. Just as Yiling was about to speak, there was a sudden sound outside the hall. Xian turned around and a wheelchair appeared outside the hall. A woman in a black dress was sitting in the wheelchair. Want to talk? The woman in the black dress suddenly said. Xian pointed to himself. Me. The woman in the black dress nodded. Yiling smiled sweetly at Xian. Brother, you go. I'll clean up. Xian gently rubbed Yiling's little head. Be careful. Yiling nodded and walked to the side with the bowls and chopsticks. Xian walked to the woman in the black dress. What's the matter? The woman in the black dress stretched out her right hand and a golden disc flew in front of Xian. This is. Xian was puzzled. The woman in the black dress said, by the order of the king, you are conferred the title of Kingdom Knight. Kingdom Knight. Xian was stunned. A moment later, Xian shook his head and returned the disc. I didn't do anything to deserve a reward. The woman in the black dress did not take it. You fought against the Tang army in Two World City. Xian smiled. That's all. The woman in the black dress did not speak. Xian sat in front of the stone steps. That was a long time ago. But now you're conferring me the title of Kingdom Knight. Forgive me for being straightforward, but you have other motives, don't you? The woman in the black dress was still silent. Xian continued. Now that I've joined the Kanglin Academy and had a conflict with the Kuraki Academy, let me guess. If I'm not wrong, the royal family doesn't want the Kuraki Academy to be the only big school in the Jiang country. Because the bigger and stronger the Kuraki Academy is, the more disadvantageous it is for the royal family and the imperial power. But now you see that the Kanglin Academy seems to have the ability to fight against the Kuraki Academy, so you want to pull them together so that the two academies will fight to the death. Am I right? The woman in the black dress crossed her fingers on her lap. You're much smarter than I thought. Yi Xian looked straight at the woman in the black dress. I don't want to be used. The woman in the black dress shook her head. From the moment you joined the Kanglin Academy, you were destined to bear the hatred between the Kanglin Academy and the Kuraki Academy. There's no right or wrong in a feud, only a matter of position. As you said, the Jiang country does hope that someone can balance the Kuraki Academy, but this is not the real reason for conferring you the title of Kingdom Knight. Yi Xian walked in front of the woman in the black dress. Then what's the real reason? The woman in the black dress raised her head. She still did not open her eyes. There's someone who dared to face the Tang Empire's black armored cavalry alone outside the Two-World City. Yi Xian was silent. The woman in the black dress suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's right hand, and then placed the golden disc in his palm. Whether it's the Kanglin Academy or the Kuraki Academy, everyone is actually from the Jiang country. Unfortunately, many people forget this point. Only those who have the country in their hearts and the ability to do so can be called a kingdom scholar. You are worthy of this title, and this title will not restrict you. On the contrary, in the future, you will be able to obtain the help of the country wherever you go. After saying that, a mysterious person appeared behind the woman in the black dress. The mysterious person pushed the woman in the black dress and left. After the mysterious person pushed the woman down the mountain, they suddenly stopped. Not far in front of them there was a drunk old man lying on the ground. The woman in the black dress bowed slightly. Old Ji. Old Ji still did not speak. The woman in the black dress continued. Although he has the intention to use you, the king has no malice. Old Ji turned his body sideways. The news of him being a kingdom knight must not be spread out. The current him can't afford to bear too much attention. The woman in the black dress bowed slightly. Understood, thank you. After saying that, the mysterious person pushed the woman in the black dress away. Old Ji was sleeping soundly. In the middle of the night, it was midnight. Yi Xian, Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi arrived at the back of the mountain. There was a waterfall at the back of the mountain. The waterfall was over 10 feet wide and the water was extremely fast. At this moment, Old Ji and Ji Anji were already waiting there. Mo Yunqi chuckled. Old Ji, are you going to teach us some peerless martial skill? At this moment, Old Ji whistled. In the next moment, a pitch-black wolf suddenly ran out from the distant forest. The wolf was several feet tall and its fur was like sharp swords. Its eyes emitted a chilling murderous light. Demon wolf. Bai Zai's expression was incomparably vigilant. High Sky Realm. Old Ji pointed at Mo Yunqi. The latter was stunned. Old Ji, what do you mean? At this moment, the demon wolf directly rushed towards Mo Yunqi. Its speed was so fast that even Yi Xian could only see an afterimage. Damn it. Old Ji, are you crazy? Mo Yunqi turned around and ran. His speed was also very fast, comparable to the demon wolf. However, in terms of physical strength, Mo Yunqi definitely could not compare to a demon beast. At this moment, Old Ji suddenly looked at Bai Zai. Bai Zai puffed out his chest, his eyes fearless. The thing he was least afraid of was demon beasts. In Mount Mang, he fought with demon beasts every day. Old Ji suddenly grabbed Bai Zai. Bai Zai subconsciously wanted to resist, but when he exerted force, he was shocked to find that he could not exert any strength at all. Under Yi Xian's astonished gaze, Old Ji put a metal chain on Bai Zai's feet that was as thick as an arm. Then he suddenly threw Bai Zai towards the waterfall in the distance, and Bai Zai's entire body directly smashed into the waterfall. At this moment, another demon wolf appeared. That demon wolf leaped to the side of the waterfall. He grabbed a metal chain on the mountain wall and pulled it down with force. In the waterfall, Bai Zai's entire body went against the flow of the waterfall. The powerful impact of the water instantly created red marks on Bai Zai's upper body. At first it was still fine, but after 2 or 3 times, there were cries of pain coming from the waterfall. Not to mention Bai Zai, even Yi Xian felt his scalp tingle. His physical body was also strong, but the water was too fast. Coupled with the fact that he was going against the flow, the water was even more terrifying than a knife's edge. At this moment, Old Ji looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This guy's training was a little abnormal. Old Ji sized up Yi Xian, then shook his head. In the entire imperial capital, in terms of foundation apart from that in Guosher, you are not inferior to anyone. Yi Xian laughed awkwardly. It's just Iso. Old Ji fell silent. He seemed to be in a dilemma. This guy's foundation was too good and he could not forcefully increase his realm. After a while, old Ji suddenly asked, "Have you comprehended battle intent?" Yi Xian nodded. Old Ji nodded. "Then it's easy." As he said that, he turned and walked to the side. "Follow me." Yi Xian hurriedly followed and Jianji also followed closely behind. Soon, under old Ji's lead, Yi Xian arrived at the foot of a small mountain. The mountain was not particularly big, but it was not small either. In any case, it was at least 10 times bigger than the Kanglan Palace. Old Ji pointed at the small mountain in front of them. "What is your best fist technique?" Yi Xian said, "Fist collapse. It's only a low-level martial technique." Old man Ji pointed at the small mountain in front of him. "Use your fist to smash this mountain. Hit it with all your might until it crumbles." Yi Xian was stunned on the spot. "Is there a problem?" Old Ji asked. Yi Xian gulped, then pointed at the small mountain. "Are you drunk tonight? Why don't we talk about cultivation tomorrow?" Old Ji looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally he turned around. "Take your sister and leave." After saying that, he walked into the distance. "Yes, I'll fight." At this moment Yi Xian suddenly said, "I'll fight now." After saying that, he rushed towards the small mountain in the distance. Bang bang bang. Chapter 47. Punching a mountain? In the past, Yi Xian didn't even dare to think of such a thing. But now he was doing it. He and his sister had to stay at Songlan Academy. Firstly, this old man Ji could cure his sister. Secondly, if they left now, they would lose old man Ji's protection. Their fates would be miserable. He had to stay here. For his sister, he could even flatten 10 mountains, let alone one. Looking at Yi Xian punching the mountain again and again in the distance, Jianji suddenly said, "You should ask them to leave." Old man Ji shook his head. "If they leave now, they will die." Jianji said, "We shouldn't have let them come." Old man Ji looked at Jianji. "Yes, coming here means going against Songmu Academy. But isn't coming here also an opportunity for them? Moreover, if they didn't meet me, their lives would be much more miserable than they are now." Jianji was silent. Old Ji looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. No matter why they came to the Songlan Academy in the past, they are now students of the Songlan Academy, and they regard themselves as students of the Songlan Academy. So, I will be responsible for them till the end. With that, he turned and walked away. But after a few steps, he collapsed to the side, drunk. Jianji didn't help him up. He was already used to it. She turned and looked into the distance. Yi Xian was still punching the mountain in a frenzy. But compared to the entire mountain, he didn't even destroy a corner. On the contrary, his hands were already a bloody mess. Jianji shook his head and left. Just like old man Ji said, since they were students of Songlan Academy, if they weren't strong enough, they would inevitably add a corpse to Xiaodao Songmu Academy in the future. Under the night sky, Yi Xian punched again and again, asking in his heart, "Senior, is this method effective?" The mysterious woman didn't answer. Yi Xian asked twice more, but the mysterious woman still didn't answer. Helpless, he could only continue punching. Was it painful? Of course it was. Although he was already at the golden body realm and his physical body was much stronger than ordinary martial artists, it did not mean that he was invincible. However, he did not doubt old man Ji's method. Although he did not know the meaning of doing this, he knew that he would find out soon. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was already dawn. Yi Xian stopped, and just as he stopped, old man Ji appeared in front of him. Old man Ji threw him a bag of herbs. "Crush them and use them on your fists and arms." With that, he turned around and left. Yi Xian opened the bag of herbs and crushed them. Then he applied them on his arms. The moment the herbs came into contact with his skin, he jumped up in pain. Ouch. When those herbs came into contact with his skin, it was like a piece of red-hot iron was placed on his skin. It was extremely painful. But fortunately, he forcefully endured it. Because he realized that the injuries on his hands were slowly healing. Actually, this little bit of pain was not a big deal to him. After all, when he was cultivating the hidden realm, the golden body realm, the pain he suffered was truly unforgettable. Now that he thought about it, he felt a lingering fear. A moment later, Yi Xian looked at his arms. At this moment, his arms were red like a piece of red iron. He turned around and charged towards the small mountain again. Bang bang bang. Numerous explosions resounded incessantly in the surroundings. Just like that, the explosions lasted until noon before they stopped. It was time for lunch. Xian came to the waterfall to wash up. Just as he was about to leave, a figure floated up from below the waterfall. It was Baizhe. At this moment, a layer of Baizhe's skin had already been peeled off. A layer of skin had truly been peeled off. It was a terrible sight to behold. Baizhe crawled over to the rock and tossed a bag of herbs to Xian. Help! Help me! Xian picked up the bag and walked over to Baizhe, and then he crushed the herbs within the bag. After that, he applied the herbs on Baizhe's body. Baizhe sucked in a breath of cold air and almost cried out, but he forcefully held it in. However, his entire body was trembling. As he watched Baizhe's injuries heal slowly, Xian said softly, "This medicine is not bad." Baizhe took a deep breath and said, "Of course. This is an excellent spirit herb, and a single leaf can be sold for at least 50 gold coins." Xian suddenly stopped, and he looked at the remaining herbs in his hand. "Really?" Baizhe nodded. "Of course." Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Why don't we stop applying it and sell it instead?" "Big brother. Don't joke around, 50-50? Hurry up and apply it, 70/30. Can I beat you to death?" An hour later, Xian and Baizhe returned to the Zhonglan Palace. At the entrance of the Zhonglan Palace, there was a man lying on the ground. It was Mo Yunqi. Mo Yunqi was lying there, and both his legs were twitching like pendulums. Last night he was chased by the demon wolf for an entire night, and his legs were almost broken. Xian glanced at Mo Yunqi and then turned to leave. An hour later, everyone sat around the table. Today the atmosphere was slightly different. When Yi Ling served everyone their food, Mo Yunqi immediately began to sweep the table. Baizhe hesitated for a moment before he began to sweep the table. Xian also ate well. After cultivating for an entire night, firstly he was tired and secondly he was hungry. Seeing Xian wolfing down the food, Yi Ling's heart ached. She quickly scooped a bowl of soup for Xian, and then she lightly patted Xian's back. "Big brother, eat slowly, don't choke." Not far away, Mo Yunqi glanced at Xian and his sister, and then he sighed softly. "Why are other people's sisters so obedient but our own?" Sigh. After saying that, he continued to bury his head in the food. At this moment, old man Ji stood up. "From today onwards, you are not allowed to go down the mountain." After saying that, he turned and left. "Why?" Mo Yunqi suddenly asked. Old man Ji did not stop. "If you want to die, go down." Mo Yunqi looked at Jianji, who licked his chopsticks. "Some students from Kuraki College have arrived at the foot of the mountain, and they are waiting for you to go down the mountain every day." Mo Yunqi sneered. "What are you afraid of?" Jianji glanced at Mo Yunqi. "You can beat one, but can you beat 10? Moreover, I heard that there are disciples from the inner court. In short, don't underestimate Kuraki College. Last time they looked down on you and you caught them off guard. But now it won't happen again. Those who dare to come will not be trash. Of course, if you feel that cultivating is boring and want to find something more exciting, you can go down the mountain and fight with them." After saying that, she stood up and went to the kitchen. Because every time, Xian would leave a portion of food for her. After the meal, Xian changed into a new set of clothes and went on to Blasting Mountain. Baizhe, on the other hand, returned to the waterfall. As for Mo Yunqi, he entered the mountain, and behind him was the demon wolf. At the back of the mountain, Xian punched the mountain in front of him again and again. Every time he punched, he would use his own fighting spirit. At first, everything was normal, but gradually he found that his fighting spirit seemed to have become stronger. Not only his fighting spirit, but even the power of his punches had become stronger. After discovering this, Xian was delighted. Obviously, this cultivation method was very effective. Therefore, he worked even harder. Just like that, Xian and the other two cultivated like this day after day passed. Every day, there would be students from Kuraki College coming to the foot of Zhonglan College's mountain. At first, they were just waiting for Xian and the others to go down the mountain. But gradually, they found that Xian and the others did not seem to have the slightest intention of going down the mountain. Therefore, some people began to go up the mountain in groups. The leader was a man in a brocade robe. He was about 20 years old, tall, and had 2 short sabers hanging from his waist. This person was one of the 3 geniuses of Kuraki College's outer court, Chen Yan. And behind Chen Yan there were 6 Kuraki College students, Each of them was at the peak of the qi-resisting realm, and their auras were vigorous. Obviously they were the top experts of the outer court. Beside Qinyan, a student suddenly said, "Senior Qinyan, I have inquired that Yi Xian and the others are not weak, especially Yi Xian. I heard that he is a swordsman, even and Wuxia treats him differently. This time we must not be careless." Qinyan nodded. "Of course not, Zhou Li died because of his carelessness, but it is normal. Not to mention him, even if I met Songlon College students before, I would also look down on them." Saying that, he looked up. "The death of Zhou Li and the others is a wake-up call for us." Everyone nodded. Kuraki College may look down on Songlon College once, but they would not look down on it a second time. In any case, it was a millennium-old institution and the students taught by it were not idiots. Before long, Qinyan's group arrived before Songlon Palace, and there was a little girl washing clothes at the entrance of Songlon Palace. This little girl was naturally Yiling. When she saw Qinyan's group, Yiling hastily turned around and ran. She ran to Old Man Ji's courtyard, and Old Man Ji was lying on a chair, and his body was still emitting the pungent smell of alcohol. Yiling walked to Old Man Ji's side, and then she lightly pushed him and said anxiously, "Grandpa Ji, wake up, they are coming." Old Man Ji did not move. Meanwhile, Qinyan's group had arrived at the entrance of Old Man Ji's courtyard, and Yiling hurriedly hid behind Old Man Ji when she saw this scene. Qinyan glanced at Old Man Ji, who was lying on the chair, and then he bowed slightly. "This junior is Qinyan from Kuraki College's outer court, and I have specially come to seek guidance from Songlon College students." Saying that, he looked straight at Old Man Ji and then he said, "Let's fight to the death. A life or death challenge." Currently, the entire imperial capital was looking at Kuraki Academy. If Kuraki Academy couldn't take revenge for Zhou Li and the others, then it would undoubtedly affect Kuraki Academy's reputation, and Songlon Academy's reputation would certainly rise. Most importantly, Kuraki College had been suppressing Songlon College for so many years, and they could not afford to make any mistakes in this year's batch, or else their batch would be a disgrace to Kuraki College. At this time, Old Man Ji suddenly said, "In the back mountain go." Qinyan and the others turned and left. On this day in the back mountain of Songlon, only one student was destined to survive. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.